Dude, that was a fun conversation we just had at the Better Life Real Estate Investing Summit. So thank you for joining me on stage that day.
That was a blast, man. Everything that I do with you is fun. I don't know that we've ever had an experience that was painful or even mediocre.
Well,
it's always been fun.
Some painful when we rolled.
Yeah, that's hard, but that's going to be painful whatever you do.
All right, man. So what I want to do here is I want to ask some of the follow-up questions that I normally ask on the show. We didn't get to them on stage because we only had 50 minutes or whatever, 50 to actually record that one. So I want to throw in the actual Better Life questions, the one that I ask everybody. The first one I asked you earlier, and you wanted some time to think about it, and then I forgot to bring it back up again. But charity of your choice. What breaks your heart? What do you want us to give the money from this episode towards?
I like what you're doing with the Tim Tebow Foundation, especially just because I see how impacted you were by that thing.
Cool, man.
And I think Tim Tebow is one of those guys that you're just like, he just seems unreal. Like, how is a human this resilient, this positive, deals with this many setbacks and just keeps on coming back, this selfless?
Yeah.
Like, there's something superhuman about him, and you may know what that is better than me because you've actually met him. But if he's behind it, it's easy to get behind.
Yeah, man. Cool. We will do so. I love that. Thank you.
From flannel to full-time flip-flops, DIYer to visionary, hot chocolate only to coffee connoisseur, he's traded cold climates and ice cream every night for sun, surfing, and triathlons. Please welcome none other than my brother from another mother and best friend, Tandon Burner.
That was the most ridiculous introduction I've ever had. I loved it.
That's not bad.
That's
right?
really good. Did you write that or did Eric write that?
Eric wrote that, absolutely.
Did Eric write that or did AI write that?
That's a better question, which we probably shouldn't get into on this episode right now because we'll be talking about it for the whole time. Brandon and I are staunchly opposed on opposite ends of the AI spectrum. He loves it. I hate it. He thinks that it's going to be cute and fun. I think it's going to be the Terminator that takes up the world.
No, I think both.
Skynet is Genesis. You heard it here first.
Take over, man.
So before we get into the show, can I tell you a funny story? I don't know if I've already told you this, but we're going to do it on the podcast.
Okay.
Somebody DM'd me asking for marriage advice because he was going through divorce. And he wanted to know, how can I make sure that my wife doesn't get all the assets? And I'm like, it's not really a question I'm going to answer for you, buddy. You need a lawyer, and I don't feel comfortable telling you how to screw over your ex-wife. So instead I said, well, what can you do to save the marriage? Let's talk about that. That might be a little bit better. Marriage is sort of under attack in our country, and I'd rather see couples stay together than get divorced. And he didn't want to get into that conversation, but I'm like, well, I've been through a rough breakup, and I thought at the time that I could handle it. It was actually much harder than what I thought. You might want to really think about this because sometimes when you're frustrated, you're emotional, in your mind, you see a situation working out differently than how it actually works. Like, have you ever quit a job based on impulse? Probably not you, but people have. And then wake up the next day like, why did I do that? I don't have another job. There's nothing lined up. And his reply was so not like I would expect this guy to answer that I asked him, did you send that from ChatGPT? And the answer was yes.
Yep.
He gave me a computer-generated answer about me pouring my heart out in an Instagram DM. And I'm like, this is why I do not like AI, because that's what people are going to do. They're like, okay, how do I say something to my wife on our anniversary that's going to really make her happy? And you're going to go to ChatGPT and say something really sweet for my wife, and then you're going to hand it to her.
I may or may not have done that recently on our, my wife's birthday, and I needed a nice birthday message for her on Facebook to be like, hey, this is my wife. So I went on to ChatGPT and I put in all my thoughts, and I said, can you make this sound better? And it made it sound better.
At least you put your thoughts in. I'll give you that. Other people are using it to save time so they don't have to think, which is what scares me. And it's a sickness of the highest order. I don't like it at all.
Well, why don't we not talk about it then, man? Because you don't want to talk about it. So
no, I want to talk about you.
I don't care.
We're back in Hawaii. We're doing our thing. I've got my AI disclaimer out of the way. So there will come a point where you and I will be pitted against each other like Celebrity Deathmatch on MTV over this AI thing, and we'll see how that works out. But in today's episode, Brandon Turner and I have, what's the word I'm looking for when you come back in contact with someone? Reconnected?
Reconnected?
That's not the word I was looking for.
I don't know. We'll call it that.
Sorry.
It's a joyous reunion?
Yeah, something like that. Like it's
you know
a
what?
reunion.
I'm going to go to ChatGPT and say, OpenAI, what is another word for, watch this. What is another word for reunion?
I think it was reunion.
Another word for reunion is gathering. More. Here are some more. Meeting, get-together, gathering, rendezvous, assembly, and homecoming. Thank you, ChatGPT. So how fast that was?
Yeah, it probably was as fast as we could have just figured it out. without having to type. But until ChatGPT is inside of our brains through a Neuralink, we still have to think a little bit.
Give it a year or two.
So I'm back with Brandon in the Sea Shed, and we are talking in today's episode. We are going to get into like a fire round of questions that people want to know about us, and then we're going to talk about the 5 things that impacted us the most from when we were hosting the Bigger Pockets podcast together. How's that sound?
That sounds good. I know Eric, who's the wonderful, amazing, good-looking producer for the show. Hi, Eric. He pitched me on this idea of the 5 things, right? And he's like, because they're all kind of revolving around this idea of financial freedom. And I think, being that this episode's coming out on the 4th of July, I think all 5 lessons should be somewhere in the vicinity of freedom. What do you think?
Yeah, well, that's what we do, right? It's also for some form of freedom, whether it's freedom from things that enslave you, freedom from poverty, freedom from not hitting your potential in life, freedom from bad relationships, freedom from not hitting your potential. I mean, all knowledge, when used correctly, should be for the purpose of some type of freedom. Wouldn't you agree?
I would. I would love to know. I'm going to take over the host seat and ask you a question. How do you define financial freedom?
We made it about 3 minutes into this thing before we got there, didn't we?
How do you define financial freedom, man?
To me, financial freedom is not having to sell out your values in order to pay the bills.
Ooh. Not having to sell your values in order to pay your bills.
So if you're working at a company that you don't feel good about working, or you don't like the things that they're doing, but you have to make the bills, there's people that can't get around that. I don't criticize someone like that. In fact, most of the time the world has been spinning, that's where human beings found themselves. Survival is much more difficult than, for most of the time the world's been around, than what it is for us. We're very, very privileged to live in a time where we don't spend very much time worrying about surviving. I mean, we spend more time, at least me, worrying about not eating too much versus not having enough to eat, which is a very unusual thing for a human being, right? We have food everywhere that's like screaming, come eat me, where for most of the time the world's been around and it's been, what am I going to eat? That's all you could think about. Financial freedom wasn't a thing. So the ability to...
Here's a deep thought.
Okay.
I'm gonna probably, this is gonna sound dumb, but interesting enough, we have the freedom to eat whatever we want, and then we get overweight and unhealthy, and we end up dying.
Become a slave.
So yeah, freedom actually leads to slavery, right? At a certain point, and there's an interesting dichotomy there between freedom and slavery, or misery.
That's exactly right. Speaking of the word dichotomy, which is a Jocko Willink word, he actually has a concept of discipline equals freedom. So if you are not disciplined enough to handle the freedom that you get, it will absolutely lead to enslavement.
You know, there's a quote Gary Keller uses in the Millionaire Real Estate Agent, and it says that financial freedom is the unearned income to finance your life's mission without having to work. And I'm a big fan of that idea, right? Like I often say, financial freedom is doing what you want, where you want, when you want, how you want, with whoever you want.
But that can lead to slavery.
But instead, the idea of the unearned income is meaning like money's coming in despite the hours you work to finance your life mission without having to work. So what is and if you don't have a life mission, maybe that's a good place to start. Like, why are you here? What are you doing this for? Otherwise, you end up making a lot of money and not having any freedom.
Which is how you end up in slavery.
Because
you start looking to things like food for comfort, or gratuitous hedonism for comfort. Right? There's a lot of things out there when you don't have a purpose and you don't know what you're going for, what you're going to. That's when the billboards on the side of the freeway that say "pull over here" become much more enticing if you don't have the end destination in mind.
Ooh, look at that! That was an analogy. That was good, man.
Thank you.
Still do those?
Every once in a while, we do them. I mean, I don't like to go overboard with it. I like to be known for more than just analogies. Unfortunately, I don't think I've been able to pull that off. Not like you, who's known for many, many, many things.
No, I'm known for one thing: acronyms.
Making me look at you are good with acronyms. You are great. In fact, my entire BRRRR book and the salary that's provided me, thank you for coming up with that acronym.
People like acronyms, man. So yeah, there's this idea of life mission. Like, what are you doing it for? What's cool about that also is it keeps you motivated along the journey to financial freedom. So, I mean, we ask people all the time, right? Why are you doing what you're doing? Why are you pursuing real estate investing? They're like, for financial freedom. And it's like, okay, well, why? For freedom. And you're like, okay, well, why? Well, for freedom.
So right. You're so true.
And then some people will go into, I want to spend more time with my family. And that was my mission for years, with more time with my family. And then I did it, right? When I left the Bigger Pockets podcast to go spend time with my family and build Open Door Capital, I went and traveled the country for 4.5, 5 months. Like went to Europe, went around the country, did all this amazing stuff with my family. I was with them 24/7. And then I realized that freedom doesn't necessarily mean spending 24/7 with my family either. It was like I needed something more than that. That's a huge piece of it, was being able to choose to spend time with my family. But that just alone, spending time with my family, was not my life's mission.
So you know why that happens?
Why is that?
Because most of us only look at one step ahead of where we are. We know, I don't want to be here. What do you want? I don't know.
Yeah.
Ever ask someone, what do you want to eat for dinner tonight?
Yeah.
They always don't know. But when you propose something, what do they say?
Okay.
I don't want that.
Yeah,
they don't say, okay, I wish it was that easy,
Yep.
right? People know what they don't want, but they don't know what they want.
Ooh.
Sometimes you have to start with eliminating what you don't want and moving forward. And as you take that journey, what you want sort of becomes clear, and you get better. You get a better understanding. Now, you also have tools like the vivid vision that you've come up with that kind of force your brain to figure out, what do I really want? But it's much easier to know what you don't want. So you knew that I don't want to miss out on my kids' childhood.
Yes.
I don't want to miss out on my family. So you made choices. But then you get there and you're like, well, this is great, but I know there's other people in the world other than my family that need help.
Yeah.
Right. So like the human trafficking thing, which we can get into later, is something that you've become really passionate about. But you probably wouldn't have been exposed to that if you didn't start the journey somewhere else, not knowing where you were going to be heading.
Oh man, that's so good. And it leads into like this the idea that's I've been talking about a lot lately. In fact, just a speech I gave at the Real Estate Better Life thing the other day, I talked about how when your mind is actually a piece of real estate, right? I love this concept. Your mind is a piece of real estate, and it is a finite piece of real estate. There's only so much land in there that can be used. And so when 70% of your mind, 80% of your mind, 90% of your mind is consumed with survival, which is what most of the world is, you do not have the land needed to cultivate the better crops, right? Like, because your land, it's just consumed with paying the bills. And when I say survival mode, I'm not talking about like, where's the food, but in a way it is. That's what our brains, our kind of caveman-y brains are like, we got to get money so we can pay the bills. Once you take that off the table, once you are set for life, to quote Scott Trench's amazing book, now you can actually plant better crops. But people are in survival mode 24/7. And so they can't think the next step. And I'll give a very tangible example of that. When I was 21, I got into real estate. A lot of people have heard my story. If not, I think I was episode 92, maybe, somewhere around there. My original episode, which was been 9 years ago. But when I got into real estate, the first 6-7 years was like build real estate, build rentals, build cash flow. I need it. But when I hit like 27, I had enough cash flow. I had $3,000 to $4,000 a month coming in, and I lived in a cheap area with a cheap house, so I could do this. And I quit my job, and all of a sudden I had level 1 financial freedom. Now, did that make me super happy all the time? No, not really. I mean, it was fine, but it was nice not having that crappy job I had. But what it did is it gave me the opportunity to start volunteering my time for this little blog that existed back then, a little blog and forum. I started just volunteering my time editing blog posts and writing blog posts. And it was run by this guy, Josh Dorkin, and it was a weird named blog called Bigger Pockets. And I started just writing for him because I had free time to do that. And then when it was like Josh and I started talking more, and it was like, hey, why don't we start a podcast? I had the ability to do that. And so I was able to plant those better crops. I was able to take advantage of incredible opportunities because I was no longer in survival mode. And that is right there a picture. Now, I'm not saying everyone has to go start a podcast, but you will likely not see the opportunities that are in the world if you are consumed with the thought of how do I get out of, how do I survive, right? You cannot live a better life.
Because you have to figure out, what do I don't want? I don't want to be hungry.
Yeah.
So I have to go work for food. That's kind of the idea of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You don't hit the self-actualization until you know your immediate needs are going to be met.
And so, and this goes back to the very beginning, and then I'll shut up. But like this idea of once you have a life's mission, and you take care of the bottom levels of the pyramid, you have financial freedom, you don't worry about survival mode, and you have a mission in life. Now all of a sudden you can move, right? So my mission back then, a large piece of it was also like to educate people on real estate. So like I had the basic bills paid for, and I wanted to educate. So I could put a lot of time and effort and money and intention into that. And that's why, one of the reasons why Bigger Pockets blew up, because I was putting 100 hours a week doing something I loved. So was Josh, and so were you when you get in. So financial freedom, if you're not sure why you want it, maybe just think about it that way, is you have a life's mission. There's something you want. You know, let's solve the financial freedom level 1. Let's get you financial freedom on this episode. I want every person by the time we're done talking today to go, I know why I want it, how I want it, and I'm working towards it. And 5 years from now, if you're not financial free, then we didn't do our job today.
Yeah, because money can solve a lot of those immediate problems. I need something to eat. Well, if I have money, that's going to be solved. I need somewhere to live. If I have money, that's going to be solved. I need to have a little bit of money left in the bank, or I need to have less pressure on me so I can think about other people in my life, right? We've all heard that example of the drowning man in the ocean that can't save anybody else if he's drowning. If you're in that point of, I have to solve this problem, there's nothing left over, like you said.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of people realize that when they get those immediate problems solved, they think that was the goal of life. That was just the goal of what they could see from that position. It gets more complicated. It gets more difficult. You start to feel pressure and responsibility. You start to realize you have influence and people are watching what you do. And you can easily lead other people into the same vices that you're in when you're in a bigger influential position. So I'd like to talk about that with you more because you've got more influence now than ever before. But before we do, we are going to get into as an ode to the old BP style, a fire round, where I'm going to fire questions at you, many of them from some of our listener base, and see what you have to say. So question number
be the
one.
New sound effect. It'd be like fire round, pew 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 pew.
It was
pew.
something kind of like that. It was like explosions.
Yeah,
Less-
but I'm
less
thinking like
pew.
the little pew pew pews.
I don't know that that's still cool, brother. I think that's like a 9-year-old meme.
Pew pew.
It was very funny at the time,
Pew,
though,
pew,
especially
pew.
working in law enforcement.
Pew, pew.
There's like pew memes going around all over the point. Question for you.
'Kay, here we go.
What happens when you fart in church?
Oh jeez, what? Is
Yeah.
that a joke or is that a question?
No, that's a joke.
Oh, okay. What happens?
They make you sit in the pew. All right. Getting into our icebreakers.
Did you make that
here.
up or did you hear that?
I heard it sometime a long time ago, but
Okay.
you brought it back.
That's a good joke.
Your
man.
pewness. I'm going to list off the types of my boats in my armada. What is your favorite and how would you rank them in order of importance? You've got the friendship, the relationship, and the partnership.
Friendship, meaning what do I care more about? Friendship, relationship.
Which is most influential in someone's life? Friendship, relationship, or partnership?
How are they different?
Well, I don't know. You explain to me. I would think they're different. Like, are you?
I'm best friends with my wife. I have a relationship with my wife, and my wife's my partner.
So she's
you
the
and I
only
are you and I are
person-
friends. We're a relationship. And we're partners.
But we don't. Well,
business partner.
Okay, so this would be a romantic relationship.
Okay, so romantic relationship.
Friendship, partnership,
Friendship.
business partnership.
Business. Okay, so business partnership, romantic relationship, and friendship, bromance.
Yes. Most influential in someone's life. What's the big rock they want to get right first?
The romantic all day long.
Okay.
You cannot grow beyond. Maybe you can, but it's exceptionally hard to grow beyond the person you pick to spend your life with. If that's wrong, there's a great quote. Who said that? Pete Vargas. He's a speaking coach kind of guy at a big company. He once told me that his dad would always say, was it Pete? I think it was Pete that said this. I'm going to give him credit anyway. Might have been
I'm just
Daniel
glad you're
Grothe.
giving credit to someone else for a thing you're
A
about
wise
to say.
man once said. It might have been Daniel Grothe who wrote a great book called The Power of Place. But either way, the quote was they were together. That's why the three of us were together when I heard this. They said, when everything's right at 123 Main Street, like their house, everything's right. Right? When everything's right at home, everything else is right. When everything's wrong at home, everything else is wrong. Therefore, romantic partner, number one most important thing. Get that right. Pick
That
the
takes
right
up so
person,
much real
work
estate in
on
your
it.
head, right?
It takes up so much real estate. When things are wrong in your relationship, you're not working out. You're not thinking about real estate. You're not doing a lot of things.
You're in survival mode a
You're
lot
in
of ways.
survival mode. That's it.
Good point.
Right? Yeah, so that's where I'll go.
That's really good. Jay Papazan at your Better Life conference kind of seconded that when he was talking about, I am a husband first, then a father, then a business person.
Yep.
If I get those first two right, all the other dominoes tend to fall in line. So that's very good. Okay, after romantic relationship, friendships or business partnerships, most influential?
I can't separate them. I don't
Okay.
have friends that are business
You are
partners,
that way,
and I don't
actually.
have
Your
business
friends
partners that aren't
become your
friends.
business partners,
Every
and your
time.
business life are your friends. That's a
Yep.
great point.
I'm not sure I have any friends that I don't do some kind of business with.
Yeah.
No, I'm sure I do. There's some people from like church, for
That's a
example.
deep thought, man. I've never thought about that.
Do you have a lot of friends that aren't business related? This is I have
yeah.
a hard time. Let's be real. I have a hard time connecting with people that aren't in my world of business. Doesn't mean they do what I do, but they're at the same mind.
Because your business
mindset.
is so tied to your mission. That's why.
Yeah,
For
I
you to
agree.
have a friend outside of your business means they're also kind of outside of your mission in
Yeah.
life. That's so important to you.
Yeah, when you get around people, and you've been around people, like, man, my boss just won't give me that raise, and I've been working like 40 hours a week, and they're not giving me a raise. It's so stupid. Like, how do I even how do I resonate with that? I can't.
Yeah.
We're operating at very different frequencies.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and I don't want to be in that frequency. Right. So I almost don't want to be around. Now there are people I'm friends with, I guess, that I'm not in any kind of business thing. However, they are in some kind of business thing usually.
Yeah.
So they're operating at a similar frequency. We're all running on the same frequency.
Yeah, that's a great point. All right, our first question is going to come from the new co-host, Rob Abasolo in The H. This is what
does the H
the
mean?
new people in Houston refer. It used to be called H-Town. They thought they were cool to call it that. H-Town kind of became cheesy, so now they call
Rob
it
lives in Houston?
The H. Yeah.
How did I not know that? I thought he was in California.
He used to be in LA for a time, but he's
fled.
in Houston. He's one of those guys that bounces around wherever he's investing. He wants to go live there, but he's in Houston
He's
now.
investing in Houston?
I believe he is.
I'm buying
You are too.
I got 2 huge apartments right now that I'm buying.
Yeah. So Rob, if you ever need a place to live, hit up Brandon. He could probably get you a discount on that rent.
Yeah.
Rob's question: how has raising funds in the recent months changed for you? What are some tips that you may have for vetting operators?
It is the hardest time in the history of me being in real estate in 20 years almost of raising money and raising capital. And I would include that in being like 07. Not that I was doing a lot in 07, 08, but man, it is tough right now.
What makes it tough?
A couple things. Number one, the news makes things tough, right? Consumer confidence is what drives a lot of this. The news has made it very scary. Recession's coming. The real estate's going to crash, even though there's almost no data that supports a real estate's going to crash. But the news likes to say that. There's very little that would.
Why is it going to crash? Because it happened before.
Yeah, exactly. Like people cannot think outside of what happened before.
Yeah.
That's all they can think is did this before. Humans need patterns.
Yep.
Right? Because our
to
brain
feel safe.
They need patterns. So the way that
especially when 80% of the real estate in our brain is not safe.
Yes.
We look for the comfort in the pattern and we miss what is actually happening.
Yeah, there's a whole books have been written on this topic of humans have to categorize things and find patterns and find meaning in things.
Oh, for sure. Have you ever dated somebody who their father left their family when they were younger? I guess no, because you've only dated one person your entire life. But this will come up with somebody who another one of my best friends, Kyle, he lost a job out of nowhere. He just got married. He started a job with another coach. That coach committed a moral indiscretion and was fired from the job, which meant Kyle was fired with him even though he did nothing wrong. And it set this pattern in his life of you can't ever feel safe. At any minute, the hammer's going to drop on you, right? Or someone who was left by a romantic partner, they were left by a parent. They have this belief that people always leave. And what's crazy is they now find a way to make that a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's they push people away to say, well, I wanted to hurt you before you hurt me, or I wanted to leave you before you left me. And then they end up using that as confirmation bias to support, see, everyone leaves. Yeah. See, you'll never, that person won't commit to a job. That's not the case in Kyle's case, but that's because we've talked about it a ton. He easily could have been I'm going to quit this job before I lose it. Yeah. And I think the same thing happens with the real estate stuff. People, it happened before, it's going to happen again. And so they don't go invest in real estate. Meanwhile, when I look at the market, I don't know if you think the same, but we very well could be going into a recession. I think we're probably in a recession, but inflation masks that a lot of the time. But all the money's flooding into real estate. It is the safest place to put your money right now.
Yeah, let's also remember, because again, people have bad memories, and maybe they don't know the data, but I think it's 7 out of the last 8 recessions, real estate went up. It was only the 07, 08, 09.
Because that recession was based on...
That was a real estate recession,
yes.
So when people think recession, they think real estate recession.
Yes, because that's the most recent.
Because that's in their memory, and that's all we can remember, right? So the fact that most recessions, almost all of them in American history, have been good for real estate investors. Yeah. That said, I love the point you made. I'm going to bring it even broader. Sometimes if you focus so much on that, like you said, the self-fulfilling prophecy comes through, we could see a real estate recession, and we're going to make it happen to ourselves because we're all freaked out. Now, I don't believe that's going to happen because I think there's so many people waiting right now because of the bigger pockets effect. We changed America in terms of real estate.
Yep.
There are millions of people looking for deals. The second there's a deal, people are gonna fill that gap. And so we've got a long time before I think we're going to see a collapse.
But so there's 2 points I'd make there. It is very true that it could happen because we do it to ourselves. And that makes me think about, well, if it does happen, it won't last forever.
Yep.
Right? It makes me think about there are times where just by pure sheer force, you can hold a beach ball underneath the ocean.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, your arms get tired. What happens when you let go?
Yep.
Shooting right back up. And the further down you pushed it, the faster and the higher it comes right back up.
We need an analogy button. Just boom.
Boom. Bing.
Yep.
Yeah, so when you do see something like all the investors get scared and so they all sell their real estate and that floods the market with supply like what we saw in 2010, yes, that can happen. But at some point, people like investors realize, oh my God, this thing cash flows so easy. Let's go buy it.
Yeah.
It turns around just as fast as it went bad and it goes shooting right back up. The other thing, my opinion, I can't prove this, but I think real estate has always been, from a financial perspective, not from an easy perspective. It's probably a more difficult asset class to invest in compared to stocks or other things you can just go buy. But it's always been the best. And it reminds me of jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu was always around. Karate was always around. Sumo wrestling was always around. Wrestling was always around. Taekwondo was always around. But you didn't know which one was the best because whoever you talked to was a sensei in that thing, and they always thought theirs was the best. And then the Ultimate Fighting Championship came around, and we actually pitted all of the different martial arts against each other, and it became very clear that this little guy doing jiu-jitsu is beating all of the big guys doing other things, and we had objective evidence to see it was better. And then the popularity of jiu-jitsu exploded. Bigger pockets sort of function like the UFC. We started to see everyone's learning this tool now. Everyone's learning jujitsu. It's going all over the place. And then as they start comparing their investing vehicle versus the other people's, real estate's blowing everyone away. Now everyone wants to train jujitsu. It used to be a secret. If you knew that, you could beat up the big guy. Well, now the big guy knows it too. And Blackstone in this case is the big guy who's going to go in there and buy it all up. So what I've been telling people is I am more worried that you will not take action, that there's not enough urgency about how valuable buying real estate is, and you will miss out on an opportunity to buy it, period, while they're waiting for this huge crash that's going to come so that they can get it even better. I don't want to get too far off our questions, but do you think that I'm being a little too greedy in my perspective that real estate is more likely to become too expensive for people to buy than it is to crash and become more affordable and people should wait to jump in?
No, I agree. I think given a long enough horizon, real estate's always going to be more expensive. And so now I also think rents are going to go up. I mean, you made the brilliant point this weekend we were talking that 30 years ago, a house was 20 grand, in some areas, and now it's 200 grand.
Yeah.
So that means if it's 200 grand, it might be 2 million in 30 years.
Logically, it would
be. Yeah, or even more because of all the money.
Because we're printing more money.
So at the same time, rents that were $200 a month are now $2,000 a month, and they're going to be $20,000 a month potentially. And so it flows together. It's like, when I was a kid, Grandpa's like, when I was a kid, you could buy a house for $12 and a pack of smokes. It's like, yep. And everyone thought that was crazy. That house.
They're going to be saying, when I was a kid, you could buy a house for $200,000.
Exactly. And so the more we can lock in debt today, the more we can lock in good debt, even at 7 or 8%. I don't care as long as you can lock in good debt.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a whole different discussion we just had on the Better Life podcast. But
it's good stuff, though.
Yeah.
It's really good to be thinking that way. You notice in our position as people who are teaching real estate and have to pay attention to it, there's certain facts that people like to grab a hold of, and there's other ones that are uncomfortable and they dismiss it. So you'll often hear it said cash flow is guaranteed, but appreciation is just icing on the cake. It's probably not going to happen. But you look back over 30 years, was appreciation just it happened to happen, or was it pretty predictable?
Exactly.
And then when you try to live off your cash flow as someone like us that's done it before, it's actually wildly unpredictable.
Yes.
You never know when the thing's going to break, the tenant's going to leave, the problem's going to occur. And then everyone accepts that appreciation could happen for the price, but we never think about the fact that it happens for rents too.
Yeah.
Appreciation applies to rents.
Yes.
Rents go up over time while the mortgage stays the same. That's what makes real estate make sense. Your loan balance stays the same. Your value of your home goes up. Your mortgage stays the same. Your rent goes up. Over time, this always happens, yet there's this consistent message of, well, don't bank on that. Don't bet on that. And we're not telling people to go out there and get yourself in the hole $2,000 a month buying a property that you can't afford.
Yeah.
No one would say that, but just let's quit pretending like appreciation in rents and prices and stuff is an accident that just happened. Like it's not predictable that that's going to continue.
Yeah. Agreed, man. Agreed.
All right. Next question here. Brandon, you are an expert and relentless marketer, a podcast, video, content all around you. And sorry, let me say that again. Brandon, you're an expert and relentless marketer, podcast, video, content all around you, and you help build the foundation of what Bigger Pockets is today. You also grew your own brand and several social accounts along the way. What is the status of the competition that you had with Investor Girl Britt to get to 300,000 followers? Is there a winner? Have debts been paid? And are there new bets to be made?
Great question. So, by the way, we did Investor Girl Britt and I raced to 100,000 originally. She won. Then we raced to 200,000. She won. Today, and then we set the bet, but we didn't set it at 300 actually. So the bet is 500,000. We wanted more time to build up here, and I didn't want to lose again. So this time she is at 259,000 followers, and I am at more than that, 330, something like that. 330.
But you didn't win because you didn't set the milestone at 300. You set it at 500,
Correct.
which you
If I
thought
would've
would
set
give you
it-
an advantage and actually worked against you.
So what's the $300,000 milestone in your life, David, that you should be setting? Instead, you were afraid, and so you...
I don't track shallow metrics like followers, so I don't know.
It's
I
not-
would
you know
track
what?
them if I was good at it. I'm at like 150, like
Ooh.
half of you.
There you go. Well, let's talk this for a minute. I think this is a very interesting point you just brought up. Shallow metric.
Doors. Number of doors.
Well, no, that's not where I was going, but maybe that is. Instagram, people might think social media is a vanity metric. Followers is a vanity metric.
Oh, I see. Yeah, it's
It
not
is-
in our business.
It is very tied to how much capital I can raise. Is the number of people who know, like, and trust me. How does somebody know, like, and trust me? They have to see you over and over and over. That's why people like
and they
these
have to see
people.
patterns of consistency in your message and the way you live your life.
So show me a way to do that at scale other than social media, and I'll go do that, but it doesn't exist. Social media,
Great point.
TV, that's it. but we own
Currency of the
own,
future
but-
is attention.
Yeah.
It's even
Agreed.
more important than dollars because dollars can be inflated. It's very
Yeah.
difficult to inflate attention.
Yeah, I don't know, if I had to guess, I'd spend $500,000 a year on my team, like the team members that run like everything from video to social to all that stuff. We probably spend a good chunk of money on that. Why? Because I'm trying to buy $10 billion of real estate. We're
Yeah.
like by the time this episode airs, I'll be just on the edge of $1 billion of real estate. Like I got 10 times more to go. So what does that mean? I need 10 times more people to know, like, and trust me. I need to consistently find, good deals. And this is the other thing with social media is actually the number one reason to have social media is not to raise capital. It's to raise people, right? Like the best people I have, all my top people, I'm a who not how guy. All my top people came from social media.
They found you that way.
They found me. I mean, they listened to the podcast, which I would include in social media, but they found me on the podcast or they read my book maybe, but then they followed me on social media. They saw a pattern over time and now they are working for me. Now people might be saying like, yeah, that's easy when you have 330. I didn't 5 years ago. I didn't 10 years ago. I started with zero, just like you would, just like everyone does. We all start with zero, and I've been working it for a long time. And so it goes back to the idea that Jordan Harbinger told us on the podcast when we interviewed him back a few years ago. I don't remember what episode that was, but he used that line, dig your well before you're thirsty. Look, I don't care if you're raising capital right now, but someday you may want to raise capital. Someday you may want to bring in employees. Someday you may want whatever. Maybe now is the time to start focusing a little bit more on your social media.
Well, I'm glad you're focusing on it because my best people come from you. So please continue. Now, remind me, what was the bet that you had with Brittany? What does the loser have to do?
Oh, man. Nickelback tattoo on the lower back.
Now, was it a coincidence that you kind of look like the Nickelback guy? So, like, Brittany's going to have to get a tattoo that looks like you.
This is how you remind me.
You sound like him, too.
I do sound like him.
We've talked about this before. Might as well do it on the podcast. Is Nickelback as bad as the reputation?
No,
that they
dude.
developed?
Okay, so I was working out with Jerry back like a year ago.
He's our jiu-jitsu instructor.
Yeah, and we're working out. And we put on, he's like, "What music do you want to listen to today?" I was like, "Let's put on Nickelback. That'll be funny, right?" So we play it, and we're like working out, and I'm like, "This song's awesome." I was like, "I forgot about this song." And then next song comes on, and we're like, "This song's great." Next song comes out for an hour and a half. Didn't repeat. Just song after song. Everyone was a freaking hit, and everyone was amazing. It's like the Taylor Swift of rock. And I'm like, do we hate them because they're bad, or do we hate them because they're good?
That's deep. So what's the Nickelback in your life?
What's the Nickelback in your life? Who are you looking down on because they're more successful? Because at the end of the day, you are jealous, whether you want to admit it or not. You're jealous of their success, so you're looking down on them. Is anybody out there listening to this going, I don't really like Brandon? Probably. Maybe you don't like my beard. Maybe you don't like my voice. That's very possible. But I know that for me, when I look at people and I don't like them, it's almost always rooted in
They expose something about you that you don't like about
something,
yourself.
a hole in me that makes me feel like the bad guy. And a wise man once said, no one wants to be the villain in their own story.
Or what opinions have you formed because everybody else was saying it and you were lazy and
there you
didn't go
go.
listen to it yourself?
Yep. Dude, that's a question right there. Like, oh, this doesn't work. BRRRR doesn't work. House hacking doesn't work. Subject 2 doesn't work. Or subject 2 works, BRRRR works.
There's going to be another recession
There's
in
going to
real
be another
estate.
recession, yeah. We love to take these shortcuts. It's easier just to rip on Nickelback because Nickelback is an incredible band.
I was a little scared to say that out loud because I thought there might be an answer for why everybody hates them, but I couldn't understand why they're so hated. Paramore was another one. People were just ripping on Paramore and how bad their music was, and I'm not a huge that type of music fan, but they don't sound bad to me when I hear it.
Do you remember, I'm going to see if this gives me a weird volume thing. Okay, watch this. Do you remember this? I know people can't actually see this unless you're watching the YouTube video, but do you remember this YouTube video? Check this out. Ready?
Look at this graph.
You heard that?
No.
Dude. That's it. That's the whole entire
Look at this graph.
That's the entire video. Look at this graph. It's a 9-second video that has 76 million views. Just go to YouTube, type in look at this graph. Look at this photograph. It's the guy from Nickelback, and he's holding up a graph. And it's like the funniest video of all time. I've watched that on repeat 1,000 times.
That is the thing Brandon would like. Unfortunately, 76 million other people like it, and so I can't make fun of you. While you're on YouTube, look up I'd Rather Eat Randy.
I'd rather eat. This is one of my favorite videos.
If you guys want to know
time.
what it's like, the burden of weight I have to
Ready?
carry to be Brandon's friend.
God is great, God is good. Let us thank him for this Randy. Amen.
It's so good. I'd rather eat Randy. Julian Smith, 10 million views.
Very, very weird song. Brandon really likes it. I don't understand it, but it's one of the only things we probably disagree on. Let us know in the comments in YouTube, did I'd rather eat Randy make you laugh or make you cringe. I want to know. All right.
And then go down the rabbit hole, by the way, of Julian Smith. He made I'd rather eat Randy, but then go watch Malk. I think it's called Malk, M-A-L-K. Or maybe it's Milk, but you'll see what I mean. That one's great. And then I never get naked in your shower. I never get naked in your shower.
He's like a Weirdo Yankovic that never really took off, isn't he?
But he's got like hundreds of millions of views. He took off.
Okay. All right.
I promise to always wear my clothes.
Next
I
from
never get
Eric.
naked in my shower.
Speaking of being naked, our producer
doors.
Eric in Colorado asks,
I never get naked in yours.
there is one small thing that has been known to plague you from early on in life about personal hygiene. Can you share what that is and if you have found a solution for it yet?
Oh my gosh, bringing back from a long time ago. I had a youth pastor when I was like in 6th grade. Jody DeYoung, shout out to Jody. She said, hey guys, you realize that nobody ever cleans the middle of their back? And I was like, because you can't reach. There's like a 1-inch spot in the middle of your back you can't reach.
The windshield, the little triangle.
Yes.
That the windshield wipers.
So there is a one. Yes, that's exactly it. There's a little. There's this little triangle angled spot on the back of you as well that has never seen soap a day in its life.
Even with your arms, you're
yes,
Mr. Fantastic
I've got some
physique.
arms, but I cannot.
You can't all
reach
get all the
that
way in there.
one little spot right there. So I mean, yeah, you could let the soap drip down. You could take a towel and maybe do this, but none of us do. Instead, we're all just gross. And don't let anybody lick your back. It's disgusting.
At least not that spot, right?
Not that spot. Lick the rest of it.
I wonder if massage therapists know that and they avoid it. Like they just like take a detour around it every single time they get there.
Yeah, the question I have for you, though, is what is that little spot in your life? Where in your real estate have you just been avoiding?
Again, if you guys have ever wanted to know what it's like to be best friends with Brandon Turner, it's that question on repeat every single time that you try to talk.
In your business, there is something that you've been doing everything. You have these patterns in your life. You do the same thing every time you get in and you just do your thing. But there's one thing you've been avoiding, and that's the part that's starting to stink, man. It's the part that you need to focus on because right now is the time to focus on that spot on your back.
The Bacterial Dilemma.
The Bacterial Dilemma by David Greene. That's the new book.
All right.
Wow, we've got
number
nowhere
4
in this show. Great.
I hope you guys are enjoying the nowhere run that we're. I mean, Seinfeld was a show about nothing, and it did really well, right?
It's a show about nothing too. But I guarantee you, by the end of the show, you will be financially free or your money back.
That's exactly right. All that money that you paid us, you'll get it. You'll get it
All
back.
that money you paid us today to listen to this show.
Next question. Where did our obsession with jiu-jitsu, which we've already mentioned once, unfortunately, begin? And who was responsible for the hundreds of mentions that our audience now has to endure?
So episode number 300, and I lied, 365. Ooh, I like that. Jocko was on episode 365. And, you know, I've listened to Joe Rogan. I've listened to other people talking about jiu-jitsu, Tim Kennedy and others. And it was always one of those, like, yeah, that's a cool kind of neat thing that'd be fun. And they say, you know, there's a lot of reasons to like jiu-jitsu. And Jocko did it, and I like Jocko. And he gets on the podcast, and I said to him, yeah, man, I would love to someday
Big mistake.
do jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And as any good friend does, not that I can call Jocko a friend, though.
He was a friend to you.
He was a friend
right?
to
Who
me.
is my neighbor? And the story of the Good Samaritan is,
there you go.
Who do you choose to be a neighbor to?
Yep. You know why? Because he said to me, someday. What day? And I'm like,
yeah, he Brandon Turner
Monday.
you is what he did. And I got to watch it in real time.
I'm like, I'm going to go Monday. He's like, okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go on Monday. I want you to text me on Tuesday and let me know that you went. So I show up on Monday. I've told the story before. I'm going to tell it real briefly now. I show up on Monday. I Googled. I'm like, okay, I know there's one of my towns. I Googled jiu-jitsu in Kihei, and there's a place. I'm like, okay, great. So I drive over there during the day to go check it out, and it's out of business. And I'm like, oh, no. So I go back home. I Google again. Where's another one? It's like 40 minutes from my house. I'm like, shoot. So I go there, and I'm late. That night, because it was like Monday, so I go there and I'm like late.
Nothing better than being the white guy in Hawaii that
geez.
walks in late on their first day of a jiu-jitsu class. That's like a
this was in Wailuku.
movie.
This is the local area. Yeah. Meaning like this is not where tall, lanky Brandon shows up to jiu-jitsu.
You're walking in the
5 minutes
wolves'
late.
den.
Oh, and everyone's in a gi, and I'm not. And I walk in there, and I'm 5 minutes late. And there's a woman at the front desk sitting there, and there's 30 men looking strong and talking and doing like some warm-up stuff, and they're on the mat, and I'm like, hi, and she's like, can I help you? And I'm like, yeah, I'd like to do jiu-jitsu. And she goes,
today?
Like, yeah, she goes, like here? And I was like, yeah. And she goes, what'd you Google it or something? And I'm like, yeah. She goes, she like looks at me and she's like, I don't, I like, you want to do this? And I'm like, yes. Like, well, I don't, just go sit over there. And she points to this bench. And on this bench is 3 6-year-old kids, maybe 5 or 6-year-old kids. And they're all just sitting there like playing video games on their iPads. She's like, just go sit over there. So I literally walk over there, all 6'5" of me. And I sit down on this little kid bench. There's 1 kid to my left, 2 kids to my right.
Never heard the detail of this story.
Oh, and I sit there for an hour and a half. And I just watch these guys roll.
The bench of shame.
Yeah, the bench of shame. And I was so mortified every second. But you know what? That's what accountability does. I was so scared to walk in. I was so scared to go there. New place, didn't know what was going on, out of place, didn't know what jiu-jitsu was, didn't have my gi, didn't know what a gi was. And I'm sitting on the bench feeling like a moron. But I knew I was going to have to report back to Jocko. That's why I'm such a fanatical about accountability, because that when I tell something to myself, I will lie to myself all day long.
Yeah.
But when I tell something to somebody I respect that I'm going to do something, I am going to do that thing. And this is why, in the Better Life Tribe we have like pods, right? Go Abundance has the same thing, pods. Hold each other accountable in a pod. Whether you're in my group, whether you're in David's group, because you got accountability, I got accountability. Build accountability in your life if you want to see tremendous growth. So the story goes on. I leave quickly. As soon as it ends, I ran out. And I was like, that was terrible. But now I at least done a little bit, right? It's like the newbie going into real estate. Mm-hmm. And you go in and you're like, hey, I'm going to look like a moron. And you make an offer on a property that's completely like stupid. Or maybe you go to an open house and you don't even know what you're doing. And you walk out and you're like, that was dumb. I'm never going to do it again. And most people never go back. But, I got home and I'm like, all right. Can't be worse than that. Mm-hmm. So I Google it again. I find another place. I was like, I'm not going to that one anymore. That was too awkward. So I go to this other place. I Google it. And 2 days later, I go to that one. I walk in. This time I walked in a little early. There's like 4 guys standing around.
You're already getting better.
I'm like, hey, what's up, everyone? And they looked at me and they're like, can we help you? And I'm like, yeah, I was hoping to do some jiu-jitsu. And they're like, literally said, what'd you Google it or something? And I'm like, yes, I Googled it. I'm like, what do I do? And I'm not kidding. The instructor points to the bench and he says, yeah, just go sit over there. And I go sit down again. And I watched the entire thing. And I just sat there and watched. But at some point, at the very end, he's like, yeah, come over here and stretch with us. And at the very end, I went and did the ending stretch with them. Mm-hmm. And I showed up the next day. And that time I got to do the beginning stretch. Mm-hmm. And then I got to watch them roll. Mm-hmm. And the next time I did a little more. And the next time I did a little more. And before long, I was in jiu-jitsu. Yeah. So long story short, there's such a great metaphor for life here in terms of a real estate. People want to get into real estate and they get scared and they don't show up. Or they get scared and they do show up and they do something stupid or they make a mistake and then they quit. But as Tony Horton from P90X fame would say at the end of every single episode of P90X, every single video, he'd say, hey, just keep pushing play. No matter what you feel, no matter what you're doing, you show up tomorrow and just press play. And that's my advice for people today.
Even Brandon Turner did not eat the whole thing in one bite. You had to split it into several small bites and kept showing up and went through some embarrassment, went through some shame, went through some humiliation, which is funny because they didn't directly humiliate you, but being told to sit on a bench with a bunch of 6-year-olds while you watch everybody else get to be cool. And then the real embarrassment starts when you actually go out there and start having to do it.
Yes, yeah, right? Then you really get embarrassed. But then you're on the mat. Like, then you're there. I'll give you two more very quick stories. I know people are tired of jiu-jitsu analogies. I'm walking through Costco. I've told this on the show before, but I'm walking through Costco, and I meet this guy who recognizes me from Bigger Pockets. What up? Shout out to you if you're listening right now. And he says, hey, man, I heard you doing jiu-jitsu. I'm a black belt. And I'm like, oh, cool, man. Yeah, I've been doing it for about 6 months now. I'm just a white belt. And he stops me. He goes, hey, man, you're not just a white belt. You're not just a white belt. He said, you know what? The white belt is the hardest belt to get. Mm-hmm. Now, for those who don't know, the white belt is the one they give you for showing up.
Yeah.
Like, that's the beginner belt. And he said 99% of people will never earn their white belt.
That's a good point.
Their white belt. Right? They give you the white belt, but you got to show up.
Oh, yeah. How many of the people listening to this are looking at you, the black belt investor? Mm-hmm. I'm going to own $1 billion of real estate, and they're comparing themselves to you, and they're like, it's how we feel when we look at a black belt. I will never, ever, ever be them. And you know what the next thought is? So why show up?
Yep.
Why even try? Because they can't be them. Versus looking backwards and saying, look at all the people who don't know anything about real estate, who have no money saved up, who are actually in massive debt, who don't know any path out of where they are other than just working that same job and hoping something external just magically finds them and changes their life, that have no plan to find financial freedom. Yeah. But they're listening to this podcast and that's starting to be developed, right? There's some people that are listening like this, like the you on the bench with the 6-year-olds that are watching what it looks like to do jiu-jitsu, and the neurons are being rearranged in their brain as they're starting to figure out what this thing looks like. That is progress. You don't have to be buying 700 doors a year for
Yep.
it to be considered progress.
You know, there's a man in Ireland back in the day who wanted to move a rock fence. You ever been to Ireland? They have these like rock fences. They're like not mortared or anything, just piles of rocks,
Yeah.
and they make the whole fence. And he had to move the fence from this side of the field to another side of the field. And so he goes over there, he grabs a rock, it's about, probably 20 pounds, let's say, and he takes the rock and he walks across the field and he sets the rock down. Then he walks back, grabs another rock, moves across the field, sets it down. And each of these rocks, let's say, weigh 20 pounds. And over the course of the day, he moves, we'll call it 10 rocks. Did that man move 200 pounds? Yes. Did he move 200 pounds at one time?
Mm-hmm.
No. He never had to move more than 20 pounds. And so oftentimes we look at the moving the wall. We look at some big project. Like, I got to do this big thing. I got to get good at real estate. I got to build financial freedom. Let's take it back to the FF. I got to build this financial freedom. And it's a big wall. It's a lot of rocks there. It looks heavy. But the fact is, it's not heavy. It's 20-pound rocks. Anybody can do it. So maybe people need to focus a little bit less on the wall and more on the rock. Just what's the next rock in front of you? What's the 20-pound rock? It's not light. 20 pounds is still a little lift, but anybody can do it. A kid could do it. You just move the rock across the field. And
Yeah.
before you know it, you got a wall over there. You got a new fence.
It's a great example.
Thanks,
You're not
man.
too bad at those.
Thanks, man. I'm trying. I'm learning
Just
from
keep
you.
the
Learning from
analogies to
best.
me. I don't want you doing everything better than me. Next question. We know that time with your family has always been a driving motivator. What is something else that real estate has afforded you? Sorry, let me say that again. We know that time with your family has always been a driving motivator. What's something else that real estate has afforded you?
Real estate has afforded me a luxury, ridiculously nice property where I live. I talk a lot about these 10 categories of life. It's like, your spirituality, your finance, your career, your relationship. But one of them, out of the 10, and we do like this little project, the Wheel of Life, but one of them is, I call environment. Environment is the physical world around you. It's the car you drive, the house you live in, the office you go to work to every day. It's the physical world, the things you touch, see, hear, feel, all that every single day. And now, happiness is not derived purely from your environment. You can be happy and living in the middle of nowhere in a terrible house and driving a terrible car and be perfectly happy. However, the more of your life categories that are on a scale of 1 to 10, closer to 10, the general better happiness I feel, the more fulfilled I feel. So real estate has allowed me to maximize my environment in a way that allows me more, again, doesn't just alone bring me happiness, but my environment brings me a lot of peace and enjoyment. I'm able to host people here all the time, and I'm able to take my kids in the pool. I'm able to do a lot of things that I could not do when I lived in the rain of Grays Harbor because of real estate investing. And I'm not talking about the money of real estate. I'm talking about I'm house hacking this house. I'm living in Hawaii for cheaper than people live in Ohio.
Yep.
And that's the fact of the matter. I'm living in a $4 million house in Hawaii, cheaper than people live in Ohio because of real estate investing. So hashtag house hacking.
Such a great point. I love it. Because you asked the question, how do I do it? Not, can I do it?
Technically, you asked the question, how can you do it? And then I answered to you.
Yeah, but you already knew it.
Yeah, but you helped me understand that. Again, the power of accountability and friends that challenge you. So thank you. You pushed me to buy
My
this
pleasure,
house.
man. Thanks for putting me in the position where I was able to talk to you. Wouldn't be on the podcast right now, even having those real estate conversations if it wasn't for you. And again, I'm also enjoying this $4 million house in Maui that I don't own myself. So please keep doing what you're doing because it definitely benefits me. On our harrowing path to financial freedom, we wanted to share some of the most impactful moments or lessons that helped us along the way and will help you move along your path as well as you listen to this. A couple of stories from the podcast that were particularly impactful that you and I went through. The first one is my favorite one.
Particularly impactful.
Particularly impactful.
That's the name of a book right there. Particularly impactful by David Greene. Coming out in 2025.
Is that what you think of when you think of me? Particularly impactful? I don't know that anyone else would.
Particularly. Okay. I feel like you should say that with a British accent.
I've got different accents. I've got a Scottish one if you like to hit it.
Oh, I like that one. That's good.
All right. The first story, this is one of my favorite ones. We call this the toilet story.
Oh, jeez.
Can you share the abridged version and how that impacted assigning value to your time? This comes from episode 423 with Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy.
It's kind of a crappy story, but I'll tell it. But get it?
Yeah.
Crappy. Okay. Geez. Okay. It starts with 4 friends. 4 friends of mine. Well, 1 friend of mine and 3 of his buddies. Young 20s, living in my apartment complex back in Grays Harbor. And I was like 25 years old ish. And they texted me and said, hey, one of my buddies texted me and said, hey, the toilet's not working. I said, okay, I'll take care of it. And then I just forgot, right? Because it wasn't in my system. I had like a system for calling for repairs.
Right.
It wasn't texting me. But he texted me and said it wasn't working. I'll take care of it. What I should have said is, sure, can you call this person, like call my maintenance person or whatever? I didn't. I'll take care of it. I forgot. Week later, he texted me back and said, hey, man, it's getting real bad. This it's about to overflow.
It's really crappy.
Yeah, it's really crappy. He's like, it's getting real bad. You really should come take care of this. Because they had continued to use the toilet for a solid week.
Of course.
Because they're 21-year-old kids, and that's what they do. So they continued to use the toilet. They had all had the flu during that period. So the toilet was completely full. I go there, and this is the era of how, not who. So not who, not how. So I said, how am I going to fix this? I'm not going to call a plumber. Plumbers are $50 an hour. Of course, today they're much more. I'm not going to pay $50 an hour. So I try to plunge it. It doesn't work. I try to snake it with one of those little hand snakes. Doesn't work. I try plunging again. Doesn't work. So I get the brilliant idea. I'm going to unbolt it from the floor. And so I unbolt it from the floor, and I pick it up like I'm doing a squat, and I'm carrying it across the bathroom, and I heave it up into the bathtub, and it covers me in everything.
Were you
that was in the
trying to
toilet.
put it in the bathtub?
I was trying to put it. I was trying to get it in
You're
the
hoping
bathtub.
they would just go down the drain.
Yeah, I wanted to flip it upside down to figure out what was blocking it.
Okay, so you needed a place to put.
So I dumped it upside down in the toilet or in the bathtub. In the meantime, it covers me, and I found a little contact lens solution bottle thing in the bottom of the toilet. So I fixed it. But then I got dreadfully sick the next week, and that was the last time really that I did any sort of plumbing on any real estate property I ever did.
Did any of it hit that one area of your back that you can't clean?
It's still there, man. It's still there. So here's the lesson, right? So it took that to get me out to go. A plumber would have been $100. A plumber would have had a powered router, that they would have, router is what you make wood out of, or make cool designs. A router to router it out. And it would have been done in 20 minutes. It would have cost me a couple $100 probably. And I wouldn't have had that problem. I would have gotten sick. But I value that lesson because it taught me the who not. Like sometimes I would be much better off. In fact, this is a much broader topic. If you want financial freedom, the lesson here is a who not how lesson. But it's not a who not how entirely. Like it's not sit on the beach and do nothing. It is everything you do has $1 per hour attached to it. If you want to hear a great podcast about this, we interviewed Perry Marshall, the guy who wrote the book 80-20 Sales and Marketing. Eric, I don't know if you can pull up what episode that was, but I'll give it a shout out if I can. But Perry Marshall, we interviewed him, and he talked a lot about everything you do has $1 per hour attached to it. If you're mowing the lawn, you could attach a $20 an hour to that because you could find somebody to mow your lawn for $20 an hour. If you're changing the oil in your car, that's probably a $40 an hour task. Everything you do has $1 per hour attached to it. The fact is, if you're negotiating a real estate deal, if you are sending out direct mail letters, that is likely more like $1,000 per hour tasks. If you work 10 hours at lead generation in your business and you land a deal that ends up netting you $30,000, how much money per hour did you just make? A lot. So what I was doing as I was trying to do everything, and I was sacrificing the great for the good. I was stepping over dollars to pick up pennies. And so that's really what I've learned in this who not how idea is find my value. What is the most valuable thing I can possibly do? And I'm going to do as much of that as I humanly possible. Now, in the beginning, you have no money. Fine. You might have to do more. But as fast as you can. Even the idea of like, okay, let's bring back ChatGPT. If there's things that ChatGPT can help you do, that's $1 an hour. Great. Get that working and you start doing the $2 an hour stuff. And then as soon as you can afford the $2 an hour or $5 an hour VA, hire them to do some of the $5 an hour stuff. Stop mowing your lawn. Hire the kid next door to do that. There are things you can afford. In fact, I would say sell your car, downgrade your house hack, do whatever you can to free up as much money as possible, and then use that money to buy back your time so you can dedicate your time to doing the higher dollar per hour tasks. And if you don't know what those higher dollar per hour tasks are, listen to any podcast episode of Bigger Pockets and you'll hear people talking about what those things are.
And just like you didn't walk into the first jiu-jitsu gym and immediately start training, the first VA you hire, the first assistant may not be the one that you run with for the entire time. It is okay if it takes a couple tries to get that right.
My first assistant I hired because I needed an assistant to help me with digital stuff like Bigger Pocket stuff and show notes and all that good stuff, my email and all that. And she's going to be my digital assistant, maybe edit some blog posts, maybe edit photos, upload the social media, all that. So I hired this woman that I know because she applied. That was the only criteria. a woman I know, and she
Why?
applied. And so it was just terrible criteria. But I hired her. First day, I buy her a brand new Mac computer. I rent her an office, and I go and I set her up in the office, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to train you today on how to do this stuff that I need you to do. So I sit down. I'm like, okay, so go to your desktop. And she said the words, "What's the desktop?" And I was like, it's like the screen. It's like everything. Like, that's your desktop. And I was like, so click on my computer or whatever it was. And she goes, "What's that?" And I was like, oh, geez. And then I asked the question that I maybe should have asked earlier. Have you ever used a computer before? And the answer was, well, I have a phone. And I realized that day I hired a digital assistant who had never used a computer in her life.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? I learned. That was sitting on the bench. I was sitting on the little kid bench that day.
That's so good.
And I found a new spot for her. She was amazing in that new role. It worked out. And the next assistant, a little better.
A little bit better.
Little
The next
better.
one, a little bit better. And they're still getting a little bit
Still
better.
good. My assistant right now, Kat, is the best assistant I ever had. It's just taking me 10 years.
Yeah.
Like, they're getting better every time.
Even Brandon Turner has failed and failed and failed and failed. I
Yeah.
think the difference is you just keep going. And so many, see, when we don't share this, people hire an assistant, maybe
Yeah.
two, it doesn't work. I just must not be good at this.
Yep.
I just suck at jujitsu. It's not for me. Let me
Yeah.
go find something else.
Oh, dude, if we could just, anytime people say, I tried that, it didn't work, like, that drives me nuts. I'm like, no, you didn't try every way to do that thing. Oh, yeah, I tried sending direct mail. It didn't work. Well, how many did you send? A couple hundred? Like, a couple hundred a day? A couple hundred a week? No, a couple hundred. Why would that work?
Yeah. I tried exercising. It didn't work.
Yeah. We don't go. I went to the gym today. I actually left the gym the other day. I made a video and then it didn't turn out well, so I didn't post it, but maybe I still will. I'll just do it right now. Let me watch this. We're going to take this clip. I'm going to put it on my social media. It's going to go viral. So, David, I went to the gym earlier today, and gyms are... Okay, let me restart. I'm going to say it again. David, gyms are scams. Completely scams. They don't work. Like, I went to the gym the other day. I went in there. I worked out for almost an hour, and I walked out, and I'm still fat. They're complete scams. They say if you go to the gym, you're going to lose weight.
And I did everything they said to do.
Everything they said. I even did the ab machine for 20 minutes. I went on the elliptical machine, and I didn't lose weight that day. So I'm never going back to a gym again. Complete ridiculous.
And everywhere I go, I'm going to tell everybody else that gyms
Yes,
are
I'm going to go tell
rip-offs, too.
everyone that gyms don't work.
I'm going to go on Reddit and start a forum just to bring up this topic.
That's it, right? Oh, jeez.
That's a great point. I mean, that is a great point. What's funny is that in certain areas of life, we understand you're not going to get into your first relationship and crush it right away. You're not going to go on a diet for a day and crush it. You're not going to go in the gym and crush it. You're not going to ride a bike the first time. You're not going to snowboard. You're not going to surf. None of that's going to happen the first couple times you do it. Yet with money, we have this completely different expectation for how it's supposed to work.
Yep. When I met Heather in college, and I fell in just head over heels in love with her. And one day I took her out for a walk. I said, "Can we go for a walk?" And I went out there and I poured my heart out. And I'm like, I really like you a lot, and I can't stop. And I really like you, and I want to get closer to you. And she said, "Oh, that's nice."
Oh,
That's nice.
oh my gosh.
Oh, and I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
And she's like, "I like you too. You're a good friend." Oh,
Gives you a little back
yep.
pat.
You know
buddy.
what? Yeah. But you know what I did a week later? I took her out again. I was like, "No, you don't understand. I really like you. And I need this. I need more."
Oh, that's good, man. How many people have reached out to a mentor, shot their shot, poured their heart out, got rejected, and just said, "I can't ever do that again"?
Yep. So many.
Do you think there's a correlation between how much rejection a person is willing to go through and how successful they're going to be?
Yep. Very much. And that's why the best salespeople are just the best at taking rejection.
Yeah.
Like the best door-to-door salespeople, like I know some really great salespeople. The best ones are the ones that can just it doesn't faze them to get rejected. It took me 4 tries to ask Heather out before she finally said yes. And I basically had to give her an ultimatum. I was like, "I can't be your friend anymore." I was like, "I love you too much." I don't think I said love, but I was like, "I am so obsessed with you." And it hurts every second of every day. And she's like, "Well then," and I was like, "I can't be friends. I'm done. I'm breaking this up. I'm no longer a friend." And she goes, I think her words were, "Fine, then just ask me out like a real man," or something like that. Because she's like, "You never actually asked me out. You did it in
and you were like, this
round-
whole time.
Yeah, she's
Such
like,
pain and personal
yeah,
anguish
yep. She's
for
like,
nothing.
Yep. She's like, "You didn't ever ask me out." I'm like, "Of course I did. I did it like 4 times." She's like, "No, you didn't." And I'm like, "Yes, I did. I said I really like you, and I don't know what to do with this." She's like, "You didn't. That's
Isn't
not
it
asking
funny
me
how
out,
that
right?"
I know exactly what that means, and that person doesn't hear it at
yeah.
all.
She was just like, "You were just telling me you liked me, and you know." I'm
Bro,
like,
my first
"Whoa."
experience telling a girl I liked her was almost the exact same thing. And it was the hardest thing at that time like I'd ever done in my life. I think this was before cell phones. So I remember like taking the phone off of the receiver and like calling her. And it was that same feeling of like, I have this ache in my soul that's making me sick.
Yep.
Like I did not want to tell them how I felt. I did not want the rejection. I was pretty sure she didn't feel the same way, but it was like killing me.
Yeah.
So I finally did. And I think I said it along the lines of, I just think you're really, really special, like more special than I've ever seen another person. And I like being around you all the time. And I think about everything I do. I want you there. And she started crying. Okay. She still didn't understand. I was saying I like her, bro. Like she cried on the phone. It was like, that's the nicest thing anyone said.
Oh,
yes, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, how do you feel? She's like, I don't know. I need to think about it. I'm like, and so I thought, oh God, I don't want to push her.
Yeah.
Like this was the hardest thing I've ever done. She's probably feeling the same thing. Let me give her time. So I said, okay, well, why don't you think about it and call me back? She goes, okay. And I'm holding my breath I'm expecting like in the next 5 minutes, the next morning, the next day, 5 days go by. She forgot about it.
Oh, jeez.
All day long, dude. This is all I'm thinking about the entire time. She forgets we had the conversation. She gets in a car accident, and I'm like, I want to call to check on her, but I'm afraid at the time. I know women listening to this probably have no way. They just think we're retarded, and we probably are. But like,
do you want to re-say that?
Yeah. They just think we're stupid, and we are. We don't understand. I was thinking it would be taking advantage of her vulnerability now that she's been in an accident to go and ask this question or go talk to her when she hasn't had time to come back to me. Finally, I just called to check on her. And at the end of it, when I realized she's okay, I was like, so what do you think about what we talked about? She goes, oh, yeah, I forgot all about that.
Yeah.
It's so weird how that can happen. And I just wonder how many people who have a goal, whether it's real estate investing or anything, that are trying to make connections, trying to make mentors, they want to sell more houses, they want to connect with a broker, whatever it is, that are in their own head, beating themselves up, having no idea the other person doesn't even realize it's happening.
Yeah, so the question is for people to think, where are you being too vague? Where are you not being direct enough in your life? Are you actually asking to buy that person's house?
Yeah.
Or are you beating around the bush? Like,
I love this house.
Yeah.
So I wish I could own one just like this someday.
Right? Same with like business partners. Oh man, we'd be great together.
Yep.
It'd be great. Instead of like, what do you want?
Yeah,
like
that's
this is like Jerry Maguire. Is that the one who was like, "What do you?" No,
Help
it's
me help
Ryan.
you.
No, this is Ryan Gosling on The Notebook. He's like screaming at Rachel McAdams, like, "What do you want? What do you want?" And like she's like, "I don't know." He's like, "What do you want?" Like that's what I'm asking people right now. Like, what do you want? You want to buy that house? You want to work with that partner? You want to borrow that money? You want to raise that capital? Go ask for what you want. You get what you ask for, not what you imply.
But what stops us from doing it is the rejection.
The rejection, the fear.
We don't want the rejection. It's not worth it.
Yep.
There's a scene in Rocky Balboa where he's talking to his son, and his son's kind of lost his path in life. You know that scene I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And Sylvester Stallone's character, Rocky, is telling him, like, you need to go after what you want. You're making excuses. Winners don't do that. You're better than that. And he says, in life, it's not about how hard you hit. It's about how many times you can get hit and keep going. I get tingles every time I think about that, right? Like, I wonder if you could measure someone's resilience with rejection if there's a clear connection between how successful they are. How many times can life punch you, and can you stand in there and get punched over and over and over to learn the pattern of what punches look like before you start slipping them? And then eventually the other person gets tired, you can knock them out pretty easy. But all of us we have this fantasy that we want to walk in there and I hit so hard in one punch, it's easy, I never break a sweat. I'm amazing, and that's the person that we're trying to model ourselves after. And when it doesn't work out like that, we go, oh, I guess I just wasn't good at it. I tried it and it didn't work. Because there's people that do jujitsu that are incredibly good at it, that are walking around like complete nerds. You would never know. But I think it's one of the things, if you do that for like there's some kids in the class I go to that started when they were 5. And they're teenagers and they're just assassins. And like, but nothing else in life they're like that. They've just done it so many times.
Yeah.
Their brain has seen the patterns and they know the movements and they see angles that someone like me that thinks about it all the time, I don't even pick up on. If you commit to real estate investing like that, if you do anything like that, you're going to be successful. So thank you for sharing that story.
Could I throw one more piece in there in a related way? I don't know how this connects to the actual toilet story that we started this conversation with, but I will say this. When it talks about asking for what you want and being direct, that means you need to get clarity on what it is you want in real estate. Let's talk real estate specifically here. There's something in Multifamily Millionaire Volume 1 that I talked about. I call it the crystal clear criteria. Oftentimes in commercial real estate, we call it the buy box. But crystal clear criteria is what exactly do you want to buy next? And I want you, if you're listening to the show right now, grab a pen and paper, write these 5 words down or 5 phrases down. Number 1, location. Where do you want to invest? Be specific. You can have multiple locations if you want, but just where do you want to invest? Know exactly where you want to invest. Number 2, property type. What type of property do you want to buy? Number 3, price range. Where do you want to buy in? What's your max? What's your min? Number 4 is condition. Condition, like do you want ugly, nasty, gross, tear down? You want just land you want to build on? Like what, you want a nice property that's A class? Like what do you want condition? And the last one would be what I call profitability. What makes it a good deal? Once you know that, it's like, hey, David, I'm looking for some real estate. Can you help me find some? You're like, yeah, whatever, right? But if I'm like, imagine me as a client of yours.
I want a good deal.
Yeah, I want a good deal. Yeah, no, David, what I'm looking for is I want something in the Bay Area, preferably the East Bay Area. I want something between $400,000 and $800,000. I'd love it to have an extra unit. I want it to be something a little bit of a fixer-upper because I really like that idea. And again, a house with an extra unit somewhere or the ability to add an extra unit. And I just need this thing to break even on cash flow. That's what I'm looking for. Are you going to take me more seriously now?
Oh, yeah.
100%. Right?
You know why people don't do that?
Why?
They are subconsciously putting the burden of solving the problem on the person they're talking to.
Ooh.
So what you had done with Heather was you, by saying, I'm a good friend, I like you, I like to be around you, but you never asked her out, is you wanted her to figure out,
to say it, yep.
Well, then we should go out sometime so you didn't have to feel that rejection. And I'm not criticizing you for that because I think I do it all the time. I think a lot of people do it all the time, but that's where that comes from.
Oh, dude, can I take this to a... I'm going to take this to a PG-13 level real quick. So if you got kids listening to this, maybe skip the next 30 seconds. But men do this all the time in regards to sex with their wives,
right?
Or their girls, right? They imply what they want. Like they would love to have more sex. They're like, oh, what a great night tonight, right? We got some time. The kids are in bed. I wonder what we should do tonight, right?
And she's like, we could have strawberries.
Yeah, exactly.
We could get caught up on The Bachelor.
Yeah. It's like, what if I was just more direct? And I don't mean that in a mean way. Just saying, like, I would like to do this tonight.
Yeah, I bet you they would love that.
I bet you they would love.
And the more direct and the more descriptive, probably the more they would like it.
A lot of people would love that. Just be. So I'm committing to that in all areas of my life. Is just being a little more direct. So I'm gonna have everyone do me a favor right now. We're gonna do a little practice here. I want everyone to pause this podcast. Who listen to it? Pause it right now. I want you to text one person. One person in your world, what you want. Now, not talking about the bedroom, but like real estate wise.
Unless you're married and that is what you want.
Unless that's what you want, right? That's fine. But I loved it. Like right now, pause it and go text somebody what you want. And then I want you to do that again tomorrow. And then the next day. And I want you to get crystal clear on what it is you want. If you don't know what you want, make it up. I don't care. It's more important that you decide than what you decide.
Good stuff. All right, moving on to number 2. You and I interviewed Steven Pressfield, the author of The War of Art, one of your favorite books. And Steven has a very no-nonsense approach to winning in life, and he often talks about you have to treat your goals like a business. You want to buy another property, but we get stuck in analysis paralysis, or you get scared off by some new type of financing, or you say, I'm not in the mood to take on another rehab. I don't feel like it right now. Professionals don't let their environment or their emotions, what's going on in their own mind, tell them what to do. Professionals don't let their environment or their own mind tell them what they should or shouldn't do. They don't follow their feelings. Professionals do what has to be done. How did that show change your life?
Dude, Steven Pressfield is one of my favorite people on the planet. The War of Art is one. I mean, like literally, we send a copy of The War of Art to every single person who joins the Better Life Tribe. Every person gets that book. And somebody asked me yesterday, why that book? Why'd you choose that? I said, because that book, if you can master that concept in The War of Art, you can master anything. And that's the idea, is that there are amateurs and there are professionals. Amateurs do things when they want to. Professionals do things because they need to get done. A great quote from that book, that he's actually in that book quoting somebody else, but I love this line. I love it so much I might tattoo it on my body someday. And the idea is this: I only write, this is a metaphor for writing, but you could apply it to anything. I only write when I feel inspired. Thankfully, I'm inspired every morning at 9 a.m. at my keyboard. And so the idea being, I show up. And the magic happens. The muse is what he calls it. It's kind of a metaphor for like this magic, this action, the results that result from you showing up and doing the work. And if we just, that's why it's called The War of Art. People might have misheard that and thought we were talking about the art of war. We're not talking about the Chinese Sun Tzu, whatever, War of Art. We're talking about art of war. We're talking about the war inside you and this idea of resistance. Resistance is a force of nature, like gravity, like anything else. And Pressfield nails this. And he says resistance is what causes us to lie in bed and scroll TikTok instead of analyzing that deal. It's the thing that makes us lie in bed watching TV instead of wooing our wife, right? It's the thing that stops us from doing the things we actually want to do, and it holds us back. It's kind of like a self-limiting belief in a way, but it's a real force, and it's very powerful.
The Bible talks a lot about how broad is the wrong road and many people take it, but narrow is the righteous road and few people take it. There is never a point in the journey of success where you don't feel that resistance. There is always the temptation to scroll through social media or sleep in a little bit longer. Jocko takes this on when he wakes up every single day at 4:30, right? I've noticed that the more I eat of certain foods, the more I want to eat those foods. Yeah. If I eat more vegetables and steak, the more I want that. If I eat more noodles and carbs, the more I want it. Like our brain and our body is programmed to do more of what we already did. And oftentimes when you wake up and you get yourself into the keyboard at 9 a.m., it's much easier to write when you've been writing, and it can go the opposite. Like you and I are going to go lift weights when we get done with this. The more you lift weights, the more your body starts to want to lift weights, the more you start to feel wrong if you don't exercise, the more momentum you get. When you're not doing it, you never feel like doing it.
Yeah, it's so true. And there's an identity component to this as well, right? You are somebody who works out, and I'm not right now. Like I've been going to the gym. I've gone to the gym quite a bit in the last few months, but I still don't have the identity yet of a gym rat, right? Like
of a weightlifter.
Of a weightlifter.
Yeah.
Now I definitely
you like to run, you like to swim, you like to surf.
I like to do that stuff. Yeah, I have that identity somewhat. I've kind of lost it with running and jiu-jitsu lately and surfing because I haven't done as much of it. I'm actually trying to change my identity to be as somebody who goes to the gym. And so how do you do that? How does that become just who I am? Like at some level, it's a chicken or the egg problem, right? Either like my identity doesn't say I go to the gym every day yet. So I have to force myself manually to do it. But if you force yourself manually to do something long enough, it becomes habit, becomes routine. Habit turns into routine. Routine turns into identity. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to craft my identity. I call it identity theft. I'm trying to steal an identity that I want. I don't have that. I want that identity because I know with that identity comes a better life. The kind of life that I want. So what do I have to do in order to get that identity over the long haul? How do we stick with something though for the long haul? How do I stick with the gym? Let me show you exactly what I'm doing. I even brought this in the room because I carry this with me almost everywhere. I actually track this. So if you have the intention journal from Bigger Pockets, you can do it right inside there. The intention journal. We have a section in there called the habit tracker. Inside the habit tracker, and I also have this inside the Better Life Tribe and make everybody do this. This is literally what we do in the tribe is we report back every week on this thing. But I've got this habit tracker. Here's what my habits that I'm currently tracking. These are things that don't come naturally to me that I have to force myself to do on a regular basis so that I can adopt, so I can create a new identity. Number 1, screen time under 2.5 hours. Did I do it or not? I check it off every morning. Did I do that yesterday or not? 10,000 steps. Did I get it? In fact, today I'm already got it. I went for a long walk earlier. Did I enter a win into as my food? Like for my food, there's an app called My Body Tutor. It's a few $100 a month. I have a one-on-one coach that checks my food every single day. Did I enter my food in, and can I call it a win? If I can, I give it a check mark. Did I pray with Heather before going to bed? Did I have a date or some kind of like no kid time with Heather? Did I do morning like reading, devotions, Bible, whatever with the kids? Did I have dinner at the table? You know the studies that show, like there's these amazing studies that show when you have dinner at the table with your family, it solves almost every problem that a kid has. Like it's like probably the number one predictor of a good kid is the amount of dinner you have at the table with them. And then the next one, this is why I bring it up, gym session. Did I get to the gym? So it's not natural for me right now. I have to force myself to do it. But by tracking it, I am instantly better. Well, check this out. This is my week right now. I know you guys can't see this, but gym session, my goal is 3 times this week. Nope. I only have 3 days left in the week. But I'm going to report back to my pod, my accountability group on Tuesday, and I'm going to have to tell them that either I didn't or I didn't do it. So guess what we're doing after this podcast?
We're lifting weights.
We're lifting weights. Guess what we're doing tomorrow? We're lifting weights. Guess what we're doing Saturday? I only got 3 days left. I'm going to get it, right? So I am forcing myself through a combination of habit tracking and accountability to get the habit so I can turn it into a routine, so I can change my identity, so I can change my life. And that's what you have to do if you want your life to change. That is what a professional does, and that is why the war of art changed my life.
It's a good thing I came to Hawaii.
It's a good thing.
Helping change your identity. You
Change
wouldn't be
my
going to the
identity,
gym if it
man.
wasn't for me.
See, you have the identity of a guy who lifts weights. And so
yeah,
I'm
when
trying
I
to
don't
borrow
do it,
yours.
I don't like how I feel.
Yeah.
I have this natural thing that makes it easier to go to the gym because if I'm not going, I feel bad.
Yep.
Versus when it's not natural for you, it's not your identity, you can skip it and it doesn't bother you.
Yeah. And for those who are not understanding the connection to real estate here, there's a lot of things you have to do in real estate on a regular basis. Analyzing deals, getting leads somehow, maybe calling brokers, making an offer. Whatever there's actions you can do on a regular basis. And if that is not natural for you right now, define what those are, track them, get accountability on them, and do them. Let me add one more point, and then we'll move on. Why did I suddenly start going to the gym again? I mean, why did I add that as a habit on here? You know why? One, I identified what it was, but two, Alex Felice. So Alex Felice is a buddy of mine who he's been around the Bigger Pockets world forever. He just came on full time to be the creative director of like the whole Better Life movement, tribe, whatever. So he is video. He's the one that set up all our cameras here. He's doing all that stuff. Alex is a gym rat. He loves it. Goes every single day. You can tell by looking at him. He's a gym guy. So you know how much easier it is for me right now to go to the gym?
Because you're in a community of people that are doing that.
I'm in a community of people who go to the gym. And so every day Alex is like, hey, I'm going to the gym. I'm like, yeah, let's go. Right? It's a whole lot easier to get to the gym because of Alex. Who is Alex in your life that will drag you with? Not even, it's like Alex didn't have to do it. He just, by him going, by osmosis, I am more of a gym person because of Alex. Who is that Alex in your life that you need to get around, and you will naturally become a better real estate investor or a better husband or a better father or a better mother, kid, wife, whatever it is role you play. If you get around somebody who has that identity right now, you will start to steal their identity and it'll change your life.
That's great. Number 3 episode had to do with Cameron Herold and the vivid vision. That was episode 447. And I don't even know we need to cover this because I think you already covered it in previous ones where you're talking about crystal clear criteria. Deciding is more important than what you decide. You mentioned that. We've already gone into the importance of having clarity, but what else was in your vision when you got clarity that made a big difference in where you are now?
Yeah, let me tell the quick story. So I went to a Best Ever conference. It's a real estate conference put on by Joe Fairless in Denver. This is like 5 years ago. And I was on stage and I was like, man, I don't deserve to be here. Like I had like 30 rental units and these guys have hundreds, sometimes thousands. There's some people in that room that had 1,000 more units, 2,000, 3,000. They're big syndicators and whatever. And I was like, the only reason I'm here is because I have a big mouth and I can sell tickets. Like, I don't want to be that guy that's on stage and I don't deserve it. I want to earn my spot here. And so I left there and I read a book by Cameron Herold called Vivid Vision. And the idea is very simple. Don't just like write out a basic premise of like, I want this many units and this much money, but like craft that into a vision, a story or a picture, something that's a little bit maybe artistic. So what I did, it's actually on the wall right behind you. I know it's all probably out of focus in the video, but it's called The $50 Million Surfers. It's a 4-foot poster on my wall. It's a newspaper article written 3 years in the future. How a small team of adventure seekers built a real estate empire, helped millions achieve financial independence, and kept their humanity intact. And it begins December 31st, 2021, Maui, Hawaii. Open Door Capital, a Maui-based investment firm, is an investment firm unlike anything you've seen. Instead of suits and ties, you'll find this small team wearing board shorts and flip-flops. And it goes on from there. In fact, I read the entire Vivid Vision at the end of that episode. If you want to go back and listen to it, I think I did anyway. I think the whole thing I read, so you can hear what my vision was. Now, have I hit every one of those perfectly? Not perfectly. But I said we bought $50 million of real estate. On December 31st, 2021, we had closed over $300 million of real estate. That is powerful in itself, is having a vision for where you're headed. It's equally powerful, if not more, for getting people on your side. Remember we talked about clarity. Oh, there's so much that this ties in. When you have clarity, like I said earlier, if I were to tell you I want a house in East Bay, that's a duplex, blah, 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 I now have clarity. People want leadership. People want clarity. People around you want somebody who knows where they're going and what they're doing. So as soon as I made that, all of a sudden everyone's like, yeah, let's do it. That sounds good. And everyone followed me. And I was like, I don't really know what I'm doing here, but this is great. Like I just made up a vision for my future. A buddy of mine, Chris Wood, the other day sent me a message that said, hey, I got a really cool idea. You can use ChatGPT to create your vivid vision. And I was like, oh, no way. That's a good idea. So he was showing me and I test. And you just like write a couple of the points that you want. Like I want this, I want this, I want this. And say, write that in a newspaper article 3 years in the future. And it'll write it. And it's amazing. Like, so if you're not an artistic writer, you can still create a vivid vision off of that. Where are you headed realistically, but also make it a little bit of a challenge and then show that to everybody. Tell everybody. In fact, I took that vision and I showed Ryan Murdoch and I said, this is what I want. And he said, let's go. And Ryan led the charge to get there until we brought in Walker, who now runs the company. And now we're, like I said, we're closing up not 50 million, we're closing in on $1 billion of real estate. In the next 10 years, we're going to buy $10 billion of real estate. We're going to give away $1 billion. In fact, let me tell you the mission of the Better Life Tribe. It's very clear. We're going to have 10,000 members paying an average of $500 a month in the next 3 years. For that, they're all going to change their lives, but that's going to produce $50 million a year. We're going to give 100% of that profit away to fight human trafficking. That's a mission people can get behind. Not only are you making your life better and getting financial freedom yourself, and we are going to make sure everybody in there gets financial freedom, we're going to free millions of people from the horrors of slavery. That's a mission people can get behind, and that's why people are following me and volunteering and helping, and we're getting celebrities on board. We're getting all this cool stuff because I have a vision, and people crave vision. So that's the lesson there is get a compelling vision for your life.
Get clarity. And it's okay if what you pick adjusts and shifts.
Yeah, sure.
I think a lot of people are afraid to put that down because I don't know for sure. Well, is it more clear than where you were before? You're moving in the right direction.
Yeah. Positive direction. Just every step forward gives you a better life.
Yes, that's good. Number 4 episode was number 365, where we interviewed Jocko Willink. We also touched on this one a little bit already because we can't help ourselves but just share information and dump value every single chance that we get. So we've already described how that led to jiu-jitsu and extreme ownerships. But for people who haven't heard of the concept of extreme ownership, can you just share briefly what that is?
Yeah, it means that everything in my life is my wife's fault. Moving on. I'm just kidding, but that's how people react, right? Yeah. It's like, oh, I didn't get laid, so it must be my wife's fault. I didn't get that real estate deal. It must be my agent's fault. I didn't get in shape. It must be the gym's fault. Extreme ownership says, no, it's yours. Everything is your fault. Everything's your fault. Everything's your responsibility. Everything is your ability to change. Like you get to control your life. Now, it's true. There are bad things that happen to people. And it's not saying, hey, that person that was mean to you, it's not your fault that they were mean to you. But you chose to be in that setting oftentimes. Yeah, that's right. Not always. I don't want to make it sound like, especially people who've had traumatic experiences.
You chose to be the kind of person they'd be comfortable being mean to.
Maybe.
In some way.
Maybe, yep. And even in the random case where it is completely like an asteroid from space comes down and annihilates your house, you still bought your house. But okay, it's still your responsibility.
Did you have a plan in place for what you're going to do?
Yeah, what are you going to do if an asteroid hits your house? Or what are you going to do? Like,
did you have enough insurance to cover you? Right.
It's a mindset shift that says, I take 100% ownership of all things in my life. And because of that mindset, I will never play the victim. I will never play this idea of, hey, I'm just waiting on another person. No, I will direct everything. And I will control where my life goes. And as the world hits it and it moves, I'm just going to move it right back because I know where I'm going because I take ownership of it.
Can I share what I love about this approach to life with you? When there is a problem, whoever takes ownership of the problem has the bigger burden. Is that fair?
Yeah.
That's why most of us don't like ownership. We don't really naturally like responsibility. People want leadership because they see the perks of it. They don't understand the responsibility that comes with it. This is why there's not as many leaders. People don't even want to take responsibility for getting clarity of what they want in their own life. Mm-hmm. It is not natural to be responsible because we don't want the burden. When your mindset in life is, how do I avoid burden? How do I make it as easy on myself as possible? It's not natural. Let's equate a burden to lifting the weight, picking up the rock, the 20-pound rock and moving it. If you are consistently the person in every scenario that takes responsibility for the outcome, and you are the one consistently moving the rock, do you get stronger or do the people get stronger who shirk the responsibility?
That's good.
So if you take a lifestyle of every time you walk by that rock pile, every time there's any problem, you lift the weight, you lift the weight, you lift the weight.
Get stronger and better.
And when you get stronger and better, things just happen to work for you better in life. Yeah. Opportunities come along that you can take down that somebody else can't take down. And the people who are not stronger don't understand it's because you've been taking responsibility your whole life. That's where you get the must be nice to be strong. Must be nice to be big enough to move that rock.
You know, out here in Hawaii, we love to do what we call whale hunting. It's actually just get on paddle boards and paddle out into the middle of the ocean and try to find whales, right? So what we'll do is we'll wake up early. We'll be like 6 a.m. I'll walk outside. I'll look on my porch and I'm looking out, or my lanai, and we'll look out on the ocean and we'll look for the spouts of the
whale.
whales.
Do you ever say, there she blows?
Nah, we do every time. And you look for like the mist, right? Because the whale's out there. We're like, okay, there's whales out there. Let's go. So we load up our boards. We drive down the beach. We run down the beach. We put our boards in the water, and then we paddle out. And we look, the whole time we're looking, where are the spouts? Where are they at? Where are they at? And we see them on the very distance, right? But we don't paddle to them because you'll miss them. They're moving. So we paddle in front of them. And we paddle. And then the whale dives down when we're halfway there. And we're paddling for an hour. And we're tired and we're miserable because it's just paddle against the waves and the wind. You get out there and the dive dives down and he's gone. And like we don't see it anymore. We're sitting there looking for 20 minutes. The whale's just gone. But then on the horizon, we see another one. The smoke goes up, but the mist goes up. So we paddle over that way. And then the whale goes down and we lose it. And then all of a sudden, we see one that's 100 feet away, right next to us. I mean, just out of the water. And it's like, whoa, it's like there's a whale right there. In fact, that was the last time I went out with Alex. Me and Alex went out together. And we were out there for an hour, hour and a half, saw nothing. And I turned to Alex, I goes, yeah, dude, it's just a dud today. We're not going to see, and as I said, we're not going to see one. Not 10 feet away, a gigantic whale went right next to us. I mean, what are the odds of that, right? Now, 9 times out of 10, when I go whale hunting, I go out there in the water, we get within 100, like we get 100 yards from a whale. If not, sometimes they pop up right next to us. It's 9 times out of 10. Is that luck, right? Is that luck? No. I mean, yes, right? Completely lucky. But I got up at 6. I watched the water. I went down to the water. I paddled for an hour. I paddled for another hour. I went around, and then I got lucky. But what do the people on the beach say? Lucky. Must be nice to have the whale pop up right next to you, right? They don't see that. Extreme ownership is saying, I'm going to paddle until I get what I want. It's saying, I'm going to get the best board I can. It's saying, I'm going to wake up early. I'm going to watch the horizon. And when you do those things right and you take ownership of the little things, you get the results of the big things.
There's a belief of people that are usually not successful at something that the thing just happens or it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Right? Like the whale just showed up or it didn't show up. The people that become successful start to recognize that it was actually incredibly predictable that it would happen for that person, right? So you could either look at life looking forward saying, I'm going to take that journey and I hope that on that journey success finds me. Or you can look from the end looking backwards and say, life wants to give me opportunity. Responsibility needs to find a home. There is a lack of leadership. There is a huge void where, like you said, people want to follow leaders. They can't find anyone to find. If I become that, there will be an abundance of opportunity and I'll get to pick whichever one I want. If I become able and capable of bearing the weight of that responsibility, if I am strong enough to carry that weight, there's probably 100 people out there like, oh my God, we have a strong person. Give them opportunity, give them a raise, give them a job, give them a position. When you have the skills, the stuff finds you. At this point in your life, you don't have to go out there hunting for opportunity. There is opportunity everywhere because you have skills that can capitalize on it. The people without the skills don't focus on becoming who they need to be to get what they want. They wait until the thing happens and say, can I do it or not? Am I ready or not? Can I do that job or not? Not who do I have to become to have that job? And I'm only saying this because once you get there and you look back, you realize it was very predictable that I would be in this position. There's a lack of good real estate agents, a lack of good brokers, a lack of good podcast hosts, a lack of people that can articulate themselves, a lack of trustworthy people that give financial advice that aren't just trying to steal your money and get rich off of your naivety. Like, do you agree in general that if you focus on getting stronger, the opportunities will find you?
100%. I mean, if you look at my business, my real estate business, who runs the whole thing? COO, Walker Meadows.
Yeah.
Walker was a freaking intern.
You were raving
intern.
about that guy from the minute you met him.
Because he took ownership. He came in as an intern. He was like, hey, you guys, a spreadsheet sucks. Let me redo this, our underwriting model.
Oh, he didn't just sit there and criticize
I know,
and say,
right?
your spreadsheet sucks. Now that's why I don't have to work hard because you gave me a bad spreadsheet.
Yeah, he was like, I'm going to redo this whole thing. He took ownership of everything. And over time, he went from intern to acquisitions to director of VP of acquisitions to COO over like a 2-year period. You know what? The Better Life Tribe, which is arguably like a $50 million company in the last 6 months, like in terms of valuation. It's a nonprofit, so we're not going to sell it. But it could be like it's a massively successful operation run by Matt Buck. Who's Matt Buck? My intern. My 2 companies that are insanely profitable and successful are both run by interns. Why did I put Matt Buck in charge? Because he took ownership. You know what? I mentioned Alex Felice, who runs the whole creative side of everything we do at the Better Life Tribe. He came in the first day and was like, you're an idiot, Brandon, at video. Let me just take over this for you. I mean, he's fairly nice about it. But if you know Alex, you know that's his personality. He's like, no, let me take over. And he just takes ownership of it. So guess what? He's in charge of a whole lot of stuff today. And so there is there is a disease of mediocrity in America today.
There you go.
Of people saying, I'm going to do just enough to not get fired, versus I'm going to be the best and take ownership of it. So I don't care if you're trying to build a real estate business, trying to build your own business, or you work a W-2 job. take ownership and opportunities will explode.
It's because extreme ownership is so rare. That's
So
where
rare.
mediocrity comes from. When you show up at a job and you don't give your best, what you're really saying is it's someone else's responsibility to fix that problem. And I wonder if you looked at Matt and Alex and Walker, I'm almost positive you would find a pattern or a common theme of areas where they showed up for you, they took responsibility, they fixed other problems. And they did that enough times that you felt comfortable putting them in the COO.
100%.
But what everyone does is they say, I want to be the COO of Better Life. Just put me in there.
Yeah.
And if you're not going to put me in there, why am I going to try?
Yep.
You're actually putting the responsibility on somebody else to give you the opportunity that you say that you want.
Yeah. This also goes back to when people always ask, hey, I want to provide value. How can I provide value for you? Like Matt Buck never asked me, how can I provide value for you? Alex never asked, how can I provide value? They got in there and provided value, right? Like they just did it. They solved problems. They took ownership of little things, and so I gave them more. It's like the biblical thing, right? Like he who has, what is it? Who's faithful with little
will be given more.
Will be given more.
Yeah.
Right. Alex in the beginning was faithful. Well, actually, literally what I did is Alex was a photographer and he worked very hard for 3-4 years at every Bigger Pockets conference. He'd be there filming, taking video, making good content. He made a bunch of video series for Bigger Pockets. He did an amazing job. He worked, and he had to push his way in to get those videos on Bigger Pockets. Like he wasn't an employee. He just was like, I'm going to make you videos. You're going to use them. And we're like, okay, I guess we'll use them.
It makes me think of the woman who complains about the guy who says, "You want to go out?" Yeah. And he says, "Where do you want to go?" And it drives him nuts. Like everyone, like plan a date, take me there. I want to see what you're like. I want to see what kind of a leader you are. Yeah. When you show up to the mentor and you're like, I want to be in your world. Tell me what I can do to get there. It's that same feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. Ryan Murdoch did the same thing, right? When I was like, showed him my vivid vision for where we're going in the company. He was like, all right, let's go. And then he went and worked on it. He went and he just built the thing until we get to the point where we could hand it off to the rest of the team. Really, we had a whole bunch of VPs like Walker and the others. And now like Ryan's still around. He's on the board of directors. We have me, Brian Murray, Ryan, and Walker sitting on the board. And so things move because that's ownership. Take ownership of everything in your life.
And be grateful for the fact that no one else is. Yeah. Because that's what makes all the opportunities out there.
Yeah, it's shocking.
No one wants to touch the weights, bro.
Yep. That's true, man.
But when you're the strong person, there's a huge need for you. Like, look for those barriers to entry. All right.
Well, dude, yeah.
Number 5 episode, 457, where you and I interviewed Patrick Bet-David here in this very sea shed. I remember that episode. People still ask about how they can do this When it comes to buying a home for your kid's college, something you do with Rosie, we talked about this with Patrick, people still ask about how they can do this for their nieces, nephews, their kids, their own family. Patrick talked about how a grandmaster in chess is thinking 10 to 15 moves ahead, a master is thinking 7 to 10 moves ahead, a pro thinks 4 to 6 moves ahead, and an amateur only thinks about the very first step. What are your thoughts when it comes to strategically planning the direction that you want your life to take?
That's a great question. Let me start in a story. I think it's called a cook tree, COOK. Have you heard of that? A cook tree? No. It's a thing here in Hawaii. There's these really, really tall pine trees, very straight, tall, like pine trees. The reason they're called cook trees is because when was it Captain Cook? Like the guy who came and discovered came to the Hawaiian Islands. They used to plant these trees back then. And they would plant them as soon as they landed on any island around the world, really. But I hear it here in Hawaii. They'd plant these trees, and we have them all over the island now, these really tall, big wooden, pine trees. Because they planted them knowing that it would take 50 to 70 years to grow to the size that they could use for a mast. Mm-hmm. So what the empires did back in the day is they'd go around, they'd plant these trees all over the world.
Wow. So
on all the islands they went to, they'd keep the little seedlings in their boat. So they'd plant them so that 50 to 75 years in the future.
Talking about delayed gratification.
Yep, they would have a mast that they could use if one broke. Because if you have a mast that broke and there's no trees around, you are stranded there for life. And so the forward thinking there. So the question is, in your business, where are you planting some cooked trees that your family's going to take advantage of? That's the delayed gratification that gets you financial freedom. Now, yes, you can get it earlier than that, but what Patrick was talking about there was this idea of like thinking way ahead, thinking 5 moves ahead, 10 moves ahead, like the whole, like I'm not just trying to get in survival mode. Like masters think way, way, way ahead. And so they plan for generations. That was the idea with Rosie's fourplex. Let me explain that story for those who haven't heard it. Very simple process, or a very simple piece of real estate. I bought a 4-unit property. The price doesn't really matter, but I bought it really cheap. It was a nasty, nasty property. I spent 1 year fixing it up, but I bought it the week she was born. It was actually the first outing Rosie had, the week she was born. And by the time we were all done with it, we had about call it $150,000 into it, meaning the loan and everything, about $150,000. We put it on an 18-year mortgage. So it's actually a 30-year mortgage that has set up the payment plan to pay off in 18 years. Because 18 years after Rosie was born, she's going to be going off to college. At the time, you can even go back and listen, because I was doing the podcast around the time that this happened, that I bought it. But at the time, I said that in 15 years from now, or 18 years from now, the property should be worth between $200,000 and $300,000. I thought it might double over the next 18 years. The property today is worth closer to $500,000. We still owe about $100,000 on it, maybe a little bit more than $100,000 on it. But already Rosie's entire college is paid for. And now I've been making cash flow on the way.
Probably more than her college. Probably her car, her college, down payment on her first house.
Correct. All from one deal that I BRRRR'd. I did the BRRRR strategy, so I didn't have to use a lot of cash. I get cash flow, but imagine this. Let me even more simple. Imagine you buy any house in America that breaks, let's call it a break even if you don't want to lose money. Let's say you make no cash flow on that property whatsoever. You just break even. Let's say you get no tax benefits, even though you would, but you're not getting any tax benefits at all. All you did was bought a property anywhere in the U.S. and put it on a 15-year mortgage, and you broke even on that strategy. At the end of 15 years, even if the property never went up in value, didn't go up a dime, you've still paid off the mortgage from, let's say, $300,000 house you bought, and it's now paid off to zero. So worst case, you have a $300,000 house. You owe nothing on it. Boom, kids' college education paid for. That's what with Rosie. Now with Wilder, I did something different. Wilder, I took $50,000 and I said, this is your college education. And I put it into Open Door Capital. And I just put it in my own fund because what I wanted was...
How mad's Rosie going to be if that ends up being worth like $300 million?
It probably already is. But the deal, I ran the numbers and it was pretty similar. When I extrapolated out like a 15% per year average annual return of $50,000, it ends up being like $250,000, $300,000, something like that. But I did that, again, I don't care about the money. I care about the lesson. I want Rosie and Wilder to see that I planted trees for them 20 years ago that changed their life when they're 18. That lesson will stick with them forever. And I wanted to show them in two ways. I wanted to show them how to do it on a passive way. I wanted them to know how to do it on an active way. The BRRRR strategy, it was a hell of a year. Like, it was hard work. It was had like squatters, and we had city problems. It was a mess to renovate that property. So Rosie can see the hard work and hear that story, and they can also hear what it's like when you just passively invest, and you kind of get the same result at the end of the day. Either way, college is paid for. So that's the thinking a little bit ahead.
So where do I go to find a house for $200,000 that's now worth $500,000?
We'll go back to the conversation earlier. Everywhere, in terms of like every property today is likely to be worth double or triple
than what you paid before.
What you paid before.
Yeah, but when people hear the strategy, they don't like the thought of, well, in the future, it's going to be worth more, but it's not guaranteed. I don't know that it's going to be worth more, right?
But that's okay, fine. Take out the not worth more. Take out the taxes. Take out the cash flow. All you get is a loan pay down.
Such a good point.
Right,
that is something you can guarantee. You don't have to worry about, well, what if the loan doesn't pay down?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah. You can mathematically see that if you buy a property and put it on a mortgage and you pay it off over time, that is real wealth that you are building. It's shocking how simple real estate is.
I had this thought. I've never shared this. In like 2008 or so, I'd been saving to buy a house and the market was just exploding. It was getting away, right?
Yep.
And I was talking to some real estate agent on the phone. This is before I ever bought a home. And said, I want to buy a property that's going to make a little bit of money. I didn't know what cash flow was called. I didn't understand a formula for ROI at the time. I just thought, I want to buy something that makes a little bit more than the mortgage. In my head, that was like a safety net, and I'll just put a lot of money down. And she's like, well, you better put a lot of money down if you're going to buy something. And I was thinking, well, she's kind of discouraging me from doing this, but I thought about it, and I thought, well, it's going to get paid off over 30 years. So if I wait long enough, it's a no-brainer. This is a great deal. And then I probably don't have to wait the whole 30 years before it would cash flow. I bet you 5 or 6 years into it, it would probably start to cash flow from the rents going up. And then I thought, well, if I had to wait 5 years, but I owned it for 30, 25 of those years it's cash flowing. And it exponentially increases every year so that the cash flow in year 20, 25, 27 is so much that any money that I lost in years 1 through 5 is probably not significant. When you look at the big picture, there is nothing better to do with your money than buy real estate with it. It's incredibly simple. It's that we always front load the process. We look at right now, what is the cash flow in year one? When I first buy it, what's it going to be like? And we just get zoomed in on that versus with Rosie and Wilder, you're saying they're going to get this in 18 years. Yep. What's the best place to stick money for the next 18 years? And now, what do you know? The properties have appreciated a ton. They have a ton of equity.
Yeah, I got lucky, right? Yeah, the whale popped up next to me. The whale popped up right next to you. We got lucky,
That's
right?
it.
And everyone's like, oh, yeah, it must be nice to be Brandon and David. They got in at the right time.
That's a great point. Now, are we going to get lucky again in the next 20, 30 years, right? Does anyone really believe that that we're going to default on our debt payments, that we're just not going to print more money to get us out of this, that we're not going to have even more inflation, right? Like I can't tell you for sure. So people that want that certainty, I can't guarantee it, but I would say odds are the whales are going to be over there. And if you're out there paddling when they come by, you're going to become a millionaire putting your money in real estate. Yep. Now, you and I have talked a little bit. We won't get into it too much. My concern is much more that, like, being a millionaire isn't going to mean anything.
Yes, that's another issue.
Right. So it's not you're investing in real estate to build huge wealth. You are investing in real estate to prevent yourself from losing the wealth that you've already created. Yeah. That's a really sad thing for people that are working hard and saving money and investing so much of their time into something that they don't want to do, and then they're losing the value of it as their money becomes worth nothing. You almost have to put in real estate just to break even. Then you have to put it in good deals if you want to get ahead. But even if that's all you did, was just put it in real estate to break even, you're still better off than the people that did nothing.
Yeah, that's very true, man.
All right, last question. What was the biggest mistake that you have made on a podcast?
Oh, geez. Should I even talk about this?
And what was the most fun show you've done? We made a pretty big one here in the Sea Shed at one point.
Did we? What's that one?
Jim Quick.
Oh, geez. Yeah, that was Jim Quick. I'll tell the story real quick, but real quick. Jim Quick is a phenomenal author, speaker, writer, very cool guy. One of the more high-level, biggest, most famous guests we've ever had.
Yeah. He does the biggest podcast. He could have been on Oprah if he wanted to.
Yeah, so he's very smart, like brain guy on memory and using your brain and intelligence. That's what he teaches on. So he gets on the podcast and he's like, and he says some compliment like, yeah, your guys' systems are really good. It was really nice getting on the show at the beginning. And I go, yeah, man, we got so many good systems here. We have this podcast dialed. And I was like, and I said the words, I'm so terrified of losing a recording that we have backups of backups of backups. I said the words, backups of backups of backups, because we do. Unless somebody forgets to hit the record button, in which case we have no backups of backups of backups. So about 45 minutes of that show, I'm sitting there chatting, having a great conversation. I look down and I see that we never hit record. And I just turned white.
The look you gave me.
Like, oh no. And we start texting like.
It was so dramatic, Brandon. I thought you were messing with me.
Yeah.
Like I thought you were trying to trick me.
Oh, geez. That was so bad.
Well, this is after you specifically said to Jim.
It would have been different if I wouldn't have been so arrogant about it.
Right.
Like, we're so good at this. We're amazing. And so 45 minutes in, I'm like, do we just pretend that never happened and we just never air this episode? And part of me wanted to avoid humiliation was to torpedo a great show.
And just not have to take extreme ownership.
Not take ownership of my mistake. Ooh, there's a lesson in there. Instead, I said, Jim, I am so sorry, man. And we screwed this up. And he was so gracious and was like, hey, no problem. And let's just start back over. And we started back over and we did a great show. It was humiliating.
He said no problem with his words. His eyes said a little. I remember there was some frustration that he was gracious enough to keep in.
He was gracious.
Yeah. And I don't know that we ever spoke to him after that.
Yeah. So the lessons there, don't be arrogant. Don't forget to hit record.
But it led to a lot of improvements. We use a different platform now when we're recording that we never used before because the platform itself records. We don't have to worry about remembering to hit the buttons on all of the hardware that you had set up. And
you know what? There's one other lesson here to pull out. That episode with Jim Quick, right? That was such a big deal at the time. It was a monster big deal like that because Jim Quick was coming on the show. And this was going to change our podcast forever. Today, Jim Quick was one episode out of 600. Yeah. Right? Most people listening to this right now, listening to you and me, never heard that episode. It made no difference. We could have scrapped the episode. We could have played the episode. It was one rock.
But the emotions in the moment made it seem like it was the end of the world. And the emotions
that felt like it was the end of the world. So it's one rock in the wall. It was, we've been moving rocks for 10 years straight on this podcast. So one rock got dropped in the middle of a thing.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have mattered. We could have screwed it up anyway. It would have been fine. So just to remember that in life when it comes to real estate too, is like, it's just a deal. It's just one deal. It's just one rock. If something goes wrong, okay. You lose some money, okay. It's just a rock. What matters is the wall. At the end of the day, like what matters is the journey, first of all, that you enjoy the journey. That's number one. Enjoy the walk across the field, moving rocks from one side to another, and then build a good wall. And if you stick with that and just keep walking, keep carrying, you're getting stronger. Maybe you're moving some bigger rocks. You're building a great wall on the other side of that thing. At the end of your life, you look back and be like, dang, like who cares about the couple rocks that I dropped here and there? Because I built something that's going to last.
What was the most fun show that you ever did?
This one's been pretty fun.
It's been a lot of fun.
Maybe the one I first interviewed you and you made fun of me incessantly for an hour.
That was a lot of fun for me and Josh.
Yeah, okay, that was a lot of fun.
I mean, there is an argument to be made that humor plays a role in being
Huge.
successful. It releases tension. It keeps attention. Sorry, it releases tension. It keeps attention.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I mean, people can just come up and they can just give you the pure vitamins, but no one wants to listen to it. I mean, don't you have speakers that are very smart, but your mind wanders when they're talking?
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. The more fun shows are usually the funnier shows, yeah, it's entertainment. I think that's actually one of the reasons Bigger Pockets did so well. Is it's been an entertaining show for 10 years, and people like to be entertained. I like to be entertained. That's why we like Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan's an entertaining guy. Even though he's not always funny, he's entertaining.
That's a good point.
And they're different.
So maybe you could define entertainment as the ability to hold attention.
Yeah, that's it.
It's hard to do for people that think that you're just sharing information. I look at information like nutrients, and I look at entertainment like taste. No one wants to eat food that doesn't taste good, even if you know you're supposed to.
Yep.
And you are a very entertaining man. You are very easy to talk to. You made this whole interview, which was pretty long, feel like it was very short. You've kept my attention the whole time. You've captivated our audience.
I'm a
You're a
captivator. That's my blue
charismatic,
eyes.
honorable man. Yeah, I'm glad that we're further apart from each other than we normally are, because it's easier for me to focus when you're not like right in front of my
We turn the
face
desk sideways and
with that tractor beam of blue eyes that just suck me right in.
That's what it
Some of
does.
the solo shows we did, I thought were a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I always enjoyed doing solo shows with you, mostly because we could play off of each other more. We didn't have as much of having to worry about the guest.
Agreed, man. Well, thanks for doing this.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for coming back again, giving the old guests some nostalgia at your Better Life conference. We actually recorded a podcast for you, so people should go check that out. They want to hear what it's like to see Brandon and I. They got the band back together.
Thanks, man. I feel like we're shutting down, but we still have the Famous Four, don't we? Is that still a thing?
Yeah, we're heading to that.
Oh, okay, good.
Do you want to do the Famous Four jingle for everybody?
Sure.
Famous Four. I'm so glad we don't have to do that anymore. All right, Famous Four. I get to ask you these questions. Question number 1, what is your current favorite real estate book that is not your own?
All right. This is a book, and I know you asked the business book one next, but it's a business book, but there's a chapter on real estate. The book is called, Keith Cunningham, The Road Less Stupid. And I've been told by multiple people to read it. Chapter 10 in The Road Less Stupid is probably the single greatest chapter of any book I've ever read in terms of real estate. Because
you read a lot of books, too.
I read a lot of books. Here's what happened. He went bankrupt back in the 80s, the whole real estate thing, just like Dave Ramsey had the trouble. Like, is that whole world of real estate changed in the late 80s? And a lot of people went bankrupt. So what him and all his buddies, who were all millionaires that all went bankrupt, sat down and said, let's make a list of every single lesson we learned. And they just wrote a list. He just took that list, and the whole chapter is simply, it's like 100 lessons of somebody who had come just out of a collapse. And so reading this, I was taking a pen, and pretty much every single line I underlined as like, oh, I need to know this. This is great.
Just
it's
concentrated wisdom.
Concentrated wisdom from multiple people in real estate. It was fantastic. And it's all common sense stuff, but it's stuff that you need to hear. Just stuff about being greedy, going too fast.
But that's what fundamentals are.
Yeah, it's fundamentals.
And you have to be reminded of fundamentals all the time.
Yeah, it was a really good chapter. I read it at a really good time.
Something I like about you, you do put the fun in fundamentals.
I put the fun.
Because you're entertaining.
I would say I put the fun in fund.
Yes, you do.
Open Door Capital, we put the fun in fund.
All right, question number 2. What is your favorite business book?
Business book. Man, favorite's a hard one. I'm going to go with, I think I will go with The One Thing. I really like The One Thing. I've been hanging out with, Jay Papazen here in Hawaii because he was a keynote for the Better Life Real Estate Investing Summit. But I really like The One Thing. When I read that book, I don't know if I've talked about this. I probably have. But when I read that book, first of all, it was the only book I've ever read where I finished page, 250, whatever the last page is, and then I went and turned back to page 1 and I read it again. I read it twice in a row. And then I had this epiphany. I said, the idea of the one thing is like, what's the one thing you can do that if you just did that, everything else becomes easier or not, not needed, basically. And I said, if I could just get this concept and the concept in this book into my thick skull, if I could just really internalize this, my life would be completely different. Everything else would be easier. In fact, the book, The One Thing, is the one thing. And so I said, instead of reading 20 books this year or 30 books this year, I'm going to read one book 20 times. And I went and read The One Thing, I think 20 times. I put it on Audible, and just for the rest of the year, the whole year, that's pretty much all I read was The One Thing. I'd go for walks. It was when I was like running a lot. So I'd just go for a run, and I just listened to an hour of The One Thing every day. And I just kept listening over and over and over. I told that to Jay, and he probably thought I was a stalker. But and then I look at where I'm at today, and I'm like, so many of the lessons in that book. In fact, just sitting with Jay at a table this weekend, I was like talking, we were just BSing and telling stories. And there were like 3 different times where I was like, wait, I think that story was in The One Thing. And he'd like laugh and be like, yeah. So like, I like so much of what I do and say and teach just came from that book. So The One Thing, Jay Papasan and Gary Keller.
There's a verse in the Bible that talks about that same principle about read the word, meditate on the word, like drill it into your forehead, like make it so it's like so ingrained in who you are that you don't have to think to try to remember. It is a part of you. That sounds like exactly what you did with The One Thing. And when it comes to wisdom, that is a really good idea. It acts as a compass that guides you when you feel lost, when you get confused. You're less likely to stray away from the path, so to speak, when you've got that software downloaded into you.
There's a great quote from Bruce Lee that says, I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times.
That quote is in BRRRR.
Is it?
Yep.
What does that mean to you?
It's repetition. It creates mastery. That's the way that I use it. That's why I talked about Bruce Lee so many times. You don't get good at anything doing it once or twice a year or once every 3 or 4 years, which is how most people buy real estate. Yeah. You have to do it a lot if you want to be good at it, just like anything else. And so there's always a new shiny thing. It's nice to say, I know 10,000 different kicks. Look what I can do. But to do one kick 10,000 times is how you become a master of it, which makes you a more feared opponent. Question number 3, what is one habit or trait you have picked up lately?
That's like my question, and I don't even know. Habit or trait.
Weightlifting?
We could say weightlifting, but I'm going to try to do something a little more clever than that. Give me half a second to think here. What is a habit or trait that I've been doing lately? You already know about massages. I do a massage every week because I love that thinking time. Tennis. I'm going to go tennis. And I've actually kind of stopped the last few months as I got in the gym instead. But for the last year, I did a lot. I got a tennis membership and I started playing tennis. Why? Because I wanted something I could do with my wife. And she had friends that were playing tennis. So I said, okay, let's do tennis. So we started playing together. And it was fun. We were having a good time. I'm going to likely switch over to pickleball and try that. I've not played yet. But
such a follower.
I know people just say, here's my problem with pickleball. It's always been, I never saw somebody have a sweat playing pickleball. No one has a sweat playing pickleball. It's always like, oop, boop,
yeah,
boop, right? But then I met an actual like professional pickleball player. He's like,
pickleballer.
I met a professional pickleballer, and he's like super in shape. And he's like, dude, no, pickleball is like intense. It's like racquetball, but you can play it outside anywhere you want. I mean, all over the place. And that's what convinced me because I'm a racquetball player through and through. I love racquetball with all my heart, soul, and mind. I love it.
Yeah, you've always loved it.
Always loved it. There's one place on the island to do it. In fact, I'm going to build a co-working spot in Maui where we're actually working on it right now. We're going to buy land. We're going to build a big co-working spot. I'm going to put a pickleball.
That's pretty cool.
I'm going to put a racquetball court in it because there's nothing else. So I'm going to house hack my racquetball court. And if you're a member of the co-working spot, you can therefore use the racquetball court. And this will be interest you. I'm going to put the bottom, like pickleball or racquetball courts are made up of all those like 4x8 panels all over. The bottom whole level, I'm going to have on hinges that swing up, and inside will be mats.
Oh, that's
and
really
you're going to
cool.
roll them out, and you have a jiu-jitsu gym as well. So I can rent it out to jiu-jitsu academies or have one hosted there. And then we can just roll it back up and back to a racquetball court. So you can reserve the court for either racquetball or jiu-jitsu, martial arts.
It's a Brandon Turner idea right there.
Yeah, I'm literally house hacking an office because I need an office. I need a better studio than this. And I'm like, I don't want to pay for it. So we're doing a $16 million development project right now. And we're going to raise capital for it. We're going to do the whole thing. And it's going to be so I can have an office. But the returns are actually stupid because there's a big need for that here.
Awesome, man.
Anyway, so
Very
that's
cool to hear
I'm
that.
working on.
All right, question number 4. What is one of your favorite things about me?
About you? That is not a question.
What the producer put in there.
That's okay. Your analogies are pretty great. You show up when I ask you to, and when I ask for a favor, you have never said no ever. You encourage me a lot and other people. You're very good at encouraging. That is maybe a gift you have, which is you see the best in people and then you call it out on them, but you also see room for improvement and call that out on them. And that's what a true friend does. So
Thanks, man. Not
you.
bad at all. Appreciate that. Not my hair, huh?
I was going to say the beard's looking pretty nice. But
Dude, it's harder to grow longer than I thought. It's I just thought it would like sprout right out. It's got to this point and then stopped.
you got to eat more carrots or something. Is that a thing?
We got to talk about that more. I was wondering if it's like a beard oil thing. Question number 5. Tell us where people can find out more about you.
I am an Instagram nerd, so Beardy Brandon, beard with a Y, Beardy Y. But nowadays I used to say Beardy Brandon, beard with a Y. People are like, okay, that's B-Y-R. I'm like, no, Beard Y. Think Spanish, like Beard y Brandon. It's like Beard and Brandon. Beardy Brandon on Instagram, TikTok, all that stuff. The podcast is A Better Life with Brandon Turner. We hit number 40 of all podcasts in the world when we launched. That was awesome. It's not there now, but it was. We have a traveling podcast, so I travel around the country and I record people, and that's been a wild adventure to do that. We'll like fly into a city and record 7 podcasts at one time over a 3-day period with no sleep, and we go out with the guests afterwards, and it's been an adventure. But man, it's been fun. So that's it. A Better Life with Ben Tanner. Go to listen to the podcast, and you were on it, so go listen to that episode, everyone. It was actually, I heard multiple people say that when you and I were chatting we did a live podcast recording, then we followed it up with a little interview after. But when we did the live one, almost everybody I talked to said that was the best part of the entire conference that I held, and that it was the best thing that you and I have done together. Like people thought it was one of the best things you and I. Now I think this interview was pretty darn awesome. But all right, next segment of the show, it's called Past, Present, Future. It's 3 questions: one about your past, one about your present, one about your future. What advice would you give your past self?
To be way more aggressive. I would have told myself to not worry as much about failing, to not worry as much about the voice that says you're not good enough, to get out there and do a lot more things. I was too conservative.
Too conservative. Do you think that still applies in a market like today where it's a lot harder? Obviously we talked about this earlier on the actual show, but like it's a different market than it was. I don't think we can expect 10% per year appreciation. Maybe we can, but it's probably different than it was. Would you still think that today going forward, should you be more aggressive than you've been thinking?
Not just with real estate investing. I think in life, right?
Life, yeah.
This is the thing about real estate investing that I don't think gets talked about a lot. It should function more as a carrot than as a tool to solve a problem.
Explain that.
So we tend to look at real estate like I have a problem. I don't have a girlfriend. I can't afford a dog. I don't like my job. I'm sitting in commute traffic. I feel uninspired. There's something wrong with my life. If I only had enough cash flow, if I only had enough real estate, all of those problems would be fixed. And then we say, okay, well, what do I need to do? I need money to buy real estate. Oh, I don't have any money. What do I do? Now we're getting into creative strategies that take money up front but don't always have money, or you end up buying real estate that we would probably caution you not to buy because you're trying to make it work. Whereas if you said, okay, I really want to buy real estate, I really want to have financial freedom, what's stopping me? Well, I have no cash. Well, why don't I have cash? Well, because I've been working the same job as a delivery truck driver for 12 years, never pushing myself out of my comfort zone. Well, why is that? Well, my mom one time when I was young said, you're never going to be smart like your brother. And I believed it. And for the last 12 years, I've thought I can only do this. Well, maybe that's where we need to start. Maybe you need to be pushing yourself a little bit more. Maybe you need to take some more risks with your life. Let real estate be the carrot that helps you overcome the obstacles that you have inside, psychologically, mentally, emotionally, whatever the case. Maybe you're in a relationship that is not good for you, but you're comfortable there. And if you wanted more, you would go start a business, you'd go take a new job, you'd go take on a new challenge, you develop a new identity in some way. And that would be natural if you cut off the thing that's stopping you from doing that. So most of the positive changes that I've made in my life, the businesses that I started, the things that I did, were because I wanted to buy more real estate and I needed more money. Then as I became a different David, the money started to come in and it opened up those doors.
That's good, man. Second question, present. What are you currently doing in your life? What have you recently done in your life that has given you a better life? Could be an action, could be a habit, could be just something that you're currently like, oh yeah, I'm working on this and my life is getting better because of it.
Two things. I listen to a lot more sermons than I ever did before. So there's pastors in my head talking about the word constantly and reframing. I don't think you realize how much the culture gets into you until you put something else in there and it clashes. Right? So you live in this world that we all have to live in, and our values are being subconsciously molded without us realizing. And it's the stuff that you don't pay attention to that's going to hurt you. Right? Like you're around a bunch of people that eat a certain kind of food. You start eating that food. Years go by of eating that food. I remember one time you told me that to you when you were young, your family had salad with every single dinner, but it was often like fruit salad, Jello salad, like some kind of dessert basically. But that was just a normal thing to do, right? You did not realize that wasn't healthy until you got around other people or
Heather's parents.
Yeah, there you go. Or until you put something healthy in your body,
Yeah.
right? You went and ate some spinach. You're like, this tastes disgusting. Well, how do other people eat this all the time? Well, it's clashing with the Jello salad that I've been having all the time. So I'm not immune to that. Nobody's immune to that. Living in the culture we are being influenced by it. We're listening to music and oftentimes don't even think about the lyrics. And then you listen to the lyrics like, this is horrible. This is actually staunchly opposed to everything that I believe is good. And this is playing in the background all the time. My mind is just soaking it up. So that has been one thing I think that's been very influential for me. And the other thing has been the last 4 weeks were an exception. But before that, last 6 months, I've been lifting weights really consistently. So I basically just came up with a super simple program where every workout had to be a little bit harder than the last one. That's it. Could literally be one more rep in the workout. So I put out, okay, these are the 4 exercises I'm going to do on chest day, and these are the weights I'm going to do. And then the next day, I'm like, well, I could add a 5th exercise. And then once I had 5 exercises, I said, okay, I could probably lift the weight a little bit more. And then when I got to as much as the weight that I could do, I said, okay, I can probably take a break and I could do another set. So instead of 3 sets of 8, I did 4 sets of 8. And then when I got up to 6 sets of 8, now it's time to go increase the weight again and cut back down to 3, right? So as long as there is something that I'm doing better every single workout, it is impossible for me to not be getting stronger and more fit. And it took all this pressure off of myself to have the perfect plan, like, you know, the idealized way. I need to go hire a person who's an expert at this, and I need to listen to what bodybuilders are doing. You don't need to do any of that. Like when you're not in shape, just showing up is really all you have to do. So then I got to combine those two things. Long workouts at the gym paired with listening to sermons the entire time, and it actually kind of became fun.
Anybody in particular you're listening to that you like a lot that you can recommend?
That's really good. There's a guy named Vlad Savchuk that I've been listening to that has been really good. Robert Morris and Jimmy Evans I listen to. A ton of Mark Driscoll. I go to his church every time I'm in Scottsdale. I really listen to him quite a bit. And then one of the things I like about the algorithm of social media, everyone talks about like it's a terrible thing, right? Like it sucks you in, you never get out. It's kind of nice that it figures out, well, you like this guy, so maybe you're like this guy too. And I don't have to actually go figure it out. Just what do you know? That's another person to listen to.
It's so true, man. That's awesome. All right. Last question about this section of this segment, past, present, future. What do you want your legacy to be?
You know, man, I've been thinking about this a lot. And the only clarity I have on this, because this is the number one problem in my life. What do I want it to look like? I know I don't want to keep going the way I was. I don't know what I want to do instead. The only piece of clarity I have right now, which means that's the step that I have to take in order to get the rest, is that I want to be around you more. Yes. And see what develops out of that. Because when I'm around you, I get clarity on what I want my legacy to be, what I want to be spending my time doing, who I need to become in order to do that. When I'm separated from you, it's not like I'm doing nothing, right? But I end up treading water is the best way to put it. I end up trying to maintain what I've got. And because we don't do the podcast together anymore, we spend less time together. I see less of what you're doing. And then I get around you again and it's holy cow. I thought Brandon was doing a lot before. You've 10x'd almost every single area of your life. And had I been with you on that journey, I would have getting pulled along in the same direction. So I don't know yet what I want the legacy to be. I know I want it to be something of service and something of being countercultural. I think that the values that we operate by are much more influential than we realize. And one of the I don't know if gifts I have, one of the passions I have, that's a better way to put it, is to staunchly call out some of the things that people get caught up in the current of and they just go along with it. And it's not till you put your foot down and you say, I'm not going along with the current, that you feel the current. Think about that. Like you're going down a river. As long as you're going down the river, you don't realize there's a current. The minute that you say, I'm going to put my foot down, oof, that's a lot of pressure, man. That's been there this whole time. Yeah. So trying to call that out for other people is something that really gets me fired up.
That's good, man. I love that. Next segment of the show, I'm going to ask you just a few general questions, kind of a revolving financial freedom, wealth, etc. I don't have a name for this segment, but first one starts like this. If you were to lose if you were to lose all your wealth that you've built, millions of dollars of wealth tomorrow, and you had to start back again, you had to build it up again, what would you do?
Well, that could happen, to be fair.
Sure.
I mean, like, wealth, it comes and goes pretty frequently for a lot of different people. The thing that you'll never lose is the knowledge that you gained when you were doing it and the character that you built when you were doing it. It's so much more valuable to focus on who you're becoming than just what you have. How many crypto millionaires did we see in the last 3 years?
Yeah.
Net worth went from $0 to $3 million, right? Well, when they lost their crypto, what did they still have? Easy come, easy go, right?
Yeah.
They probably didn't have anything, right?
Yeah.
Now, let's say that you built a pool cleaning or a landscaping business to $3 million, and then the landscape, pardon the pun, of landscaping changed. And all of a sudden people don't have lawns anymore, and you lost your entire company, all your employees quit, you're left with a bunch of material and vehicles you had to sell. You still have the knowledge of what it took to build a business. You're going to be able to do it much faster. So your question was, what would I do if I lost everything?
Yeah. What
right?
would you do to build it back?
I would find a cause that makes me excited and passionate about every day, and I would apply all the principles that I used to build a real estate team and a loan company and my own portfolio, and I apply those skills towards that cause.
Oh, here's a question then on that. Would you use real estate again now to build wealth, or would you build wealth in some other way and then just dump it into real estate? I don't think you're going to leave real estate because you love it too much, or you love the wealth of it. But
That's a good
would
point.
you build it elsewhere?
When you look at where real estate really benefits you, it's always way further down the line.
Mm-hmm.
It is not an efficient way to create wealth out of nothing. It is a much better way of growing wealth you've already built. That's a great point. Robert Kiyosaki has a good line where he says the purpose of business is to buy real estate. There's this wonderful relationship between making money in business and growing money and sheltering taxes with real estate. You almost need, it's like when the blades of a scissor are working perfectly, to ask which one of them is more important. It's kind of silly. You got to have both of them to make that happen. So and that's kind of how my life looks, is my businesses are based in real estate. There's some form of service around real estate. So I think if what you want is a lot of money, you're better off to become an entrepreneur and start a business. If what you want is a way to protect money that you've already got and grow it, what you want is real estate. So I would make the money through business.
All right, that's good. In the next section, I'm going to call fill in the blank. I'm making this up as I go, but I like this idea. I've been playing with this idea for a section. I'm going to read it. I'm going to say a line with a blank, and I want you to restate a line that I said and then to fill in the blank. Okay. And it's got to be quick, under 30 seconds. This is social, maybe under a minute. It's social media fodder right here.
All right.
All right. The secret to building wealth is blank.
The secret to building wealth is to learn how to solve a problem the marketplace has and bring value to the marketplace, which is, I know, a vague term about bringing value. But if you just think about it, it's doing something that someone else needs in a way that's very good.
Very good. Next one. Let's see, good fill in the blank one. One of the biggest mistakes people make when building a real estate empire is blank. And then
one of the biggest mistakes people make when building a real estate empire is failing to account for how delayed gratification is so important. We're only focusing on one of the 10 ways that real estate makes money. The most common one is cash flow. Everybody is out there looking for cash flow. It leads them into buying in the wrong locations, the wrong types of properties, or choosing the wrong tenant in order to try to get an immediate payoff. Real estate really works well over the long term. It's tough to make it work well in the short term. So the more your immediate need to get out of pain is present, the more likely you are to make poor decisions when it comes to long-term wealth through real estate.
I think everyone's first deal should be
the house that they live in. Getting rid of your biggest expense, which is your housing expense, is the number one thing you can do to improve your financial position. And you'll see that if you stop narrowing in on your real estate portfolio and you zoom out and you look at your entire financial picture. If I looked at your budget, which is really the first step, is make a budget, I could quickly see where most of the money is going. And if we can solve those problems, 80% of it is already done.
If I had learned this when I was 20, I'd be so much wealthier today.
When I was 20, if I had learned that it's okay to try and fail and it's not an indictment on who I am as a person, I would be way better off than where I am today. I was so measured, so calculated, and so risk averse. Really, it was rejection averse, if I'm being honest about it, that I missed out on opportunities that other people took advantage of that I would have been way more suited to do well in.
The best piece of financial advice I ever got was, Or a life-changing piece of financial advice I once got was.
A life-changing piece of financial advice that I once got was never stop saving your money. It's very easy when you start to make money easier to assume it's always going to be coming in, start to spend money like it's always going to be coming in. Now my expectation of what I think I deserve in life, I start to become entitled, and I think that it's normal to be driving a Porsche or a Ferrari or eating in expensive restaurants all the time. Now I'm attracting people into my life that still have that same way of looking at money where they don't value it. You actually lose appreciation for money when you treat it like it's cheap.
That's great, man. All right, next segment of the show. This is called the 3, 2, 1. 3 books that have made a pivot in your life. Like we call them pivot books, where your life was going one direction, you read it, you went another direction. So 3 books, pivot books, 2 people you look up to, and 1 quote you live your life by.
3 books, Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink, Pitch Anything by Oren Clough, and So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport absolutely impacted my life significantly, which doesn't happen all the time. 2 people I look up to, you would definitely be one of them. Aww. I am continually amazed at how you keep growing but don't get a bigger ego. I haven't figured out how you're doing that, but that's definitely commendable. And Patrick Bet-David. I look up to him a lot. He's doing something similar to you in that he's building an ecosystem where other people can come in, and they really emphasize free speech. So he's okay. He can talk to people he doesn't agree with. He can think that they're a complete moron, and he will still have a conversation with them. I really value when someone is secure enough to listen to an opinion that's not theirs, and then use superior debate skills to show the holes in that argument, rather than just shouting them down or never letting them speak at all. There's too much of that's going on.
Yeah, that's really good, man.
And what was the one?
1 quote that you live your life by.
And 1 quote I live my life by comes from Dominic Toretto from the Fast and the Furious. I live my life 1/4 mile at a time.
Explain that.
It's actually a very cheesy line. Dominic Toretto was just basically talking about how he's very focused on only one thing, which is winning races. His whole identity is built around winning races. And so he looks at the obstacle that's right in front of him and not everything else, with like 1/4 mile is like a race that they do, right? And I've learned that Navy SEALs, and they're talking about how they got through Bud's camp, which is one of the most difficult thing any human being can ever do, is you can't think about this as a 2-week course or a 4-week course. What you have to say is, in the next 45 minutes, in the next hour and a half, I have to get through that. And when I do, they have to let me eat or they have to let me rest. There will come a break from this, and I just got to get to that. And then you get there and you rest as much as you can, and then you put your focus on the next little, well, it's not a little obstacle to them, but it is compared to a 4-week period of time. Okay, I have to go swimming for the next hour and a half. It's going to suck, but they got to feed me when I'm done. They got to let me rest when I'm done. I just got to get through the swimming. So many things become daunting when we try to look too far into the future and anticipate what's going to come instead of just the challenge that's in front of me right now.
Yeah, there's that metaphor that I've been using about carrying rocks from one side of the field to the other.
Yeah.
If you got to carry 20 rocks that each weigh 20 pounds, that's 400 combined pounds, and it feels like a lot. It feels really heavy. But if you just focus on one rock at a time, it's only 20 pounds each time.
That's it.
Just move the 20 pounds, just keep walking around.
That's literally how I saved the money to get in real estate investing.
Yeah.
I focused every week. I had to put $500 in the bank.
Yeah,
that was it.
That's it.
Working in restaurants. If I only have $400, I got to pick up 2 shifts this weekend that I wasn't going to work to get to 500. And if I have $600, that's great. But next week I still got to make 500. And every week I just put $500 in the bank. After 4 years of college, that was $100,000 that I had saved up. That was a down payment on my first 3 rental properties. Those things ended up becoming worth more than $1 million. And I was sort of off to the races of real estate investing.
I love it, man. Well, last question. Where can people find out more about you, connect with you, learn about you, hear your stuff, all that good?
Find me at davidgreen24.com. Let me know what you think about the new website, and then follow me on Instagram, on Facebook. You can find me everywhere at davidgreen24.
I love it, man. Thank you for being on the show. This has been A Better Life with Brandon Turner. I'm your host, Brandon Turner, signing off.